Geraldine Kriegel and Patrick Kriegel lived in Ireland. In 2006, they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. They had a wonderful relationship. Even though they faced infertility, they did not lose hope. Both had successful careers, financial stability, and they wanted to adopt. They were waiting for confirmation of their documents. Finally, Geraldine and Patrick received news that a 2-year-old girl from Russia is available for adoption. Her name was Anastasia. She was born on February 18, 2004, in Novokuznetsk, Russia. Immediately after birth, she was taken to an orphanage because her biological mother was unable to provide for her. Anastasia spent her entire childhood mostly alone, as the caregivers primarily focused on more demanding children. This lack of attention resulted in her having difficulty expressing emotions. Geraldine and Patrick was overjoyed when they learned about Anastasia. They quickly developed a close relationship with her. On August 10, 2006, they brought her home, and this date became a family holiday. From now on, her name is Anastasia Anna Kriegel, affectionately called Anna. The day when laughter filled their home was the day that Geraldine and Patrick truly became parents. They wanted Anna to remember her culture, so they bought her a matryoshka doll. The once quiet life of Geraldine and Patrick turned into a fun adventure. Anna was daddy's angel and mommy's princess. They tried to diversify their lives as much as possible. They went ice skating and planned excursions every summer. They vacationed in Patrick's hometown of Annecy, France, where they had a house, and Anna made several friends. She always looked forward to this trip, enjoyed France, and even studied French. However, there were obstacles in Anna's life. She struggled with learning English, and her mother helped her because she wanted Anna to be able to communicate with her peers. Anna also faced challenges in forming close relationships and expressing her emotions. Time spent without adequate care in the orphanage led her to be uncomfortable with physical affection. Nonetheless, Geraldine and Patrick were able to help Anna overcome this emotional emptiness through their unconditional love, support. A nurturing environment, combined with educational activities, healthy eating, and sports, laid a solid foundation for Anna's future. Unfortunately, the girl also faced health concerns. During a routine examination, the doctor discovered a tumor in her right ear, which caused hearing loss, as well as partial blindness in her right eye. Despite these difficulties, Anna grew into an energetic and joyful girl. However, her hearing and vision problems made studying difficult, leading to poor academic performance in elementary school. She attended consultations with specialists until the 3rd grade in order to keep up with her peers. In her everyday life, Anna took her challenges to heart. This affected her self-esteem and diminished her desire to live in this world. One day, while walking home and enjoying the fresh air with music playing through her favorite headphones, she encountered 4 boys who blocked her path. They made fun of her, one even pinched her. Anna ran home in tears and told her mother. Geraldine and Patrick took this incident seriously and filed a complaint against the boys, informing the police about the boy who had touched Anna. However, he was let off with just a warning. Consequently, the parents decided to accompany Anna to school and pick her up every day themselves, but this led to more ridicule. She vented her feelings on social media, seeking acceptance from her peers. This situation deeply affected Geraldine. It was painful for her to see how unhappy her daughter was. Soon, Anna began to inflict physical harm on herself to drown out the emotional pain. The parents realized the severity of the situation and worried that their child might take more drastic actions. Geraldine's only wish was for her daughter to be happy. Finally, Anna began to show signs of improvement thanks to personal therapy. She made some friends with whom she had sleepovers, went for walks, watched movies, discussed boys. As Anna's high school education was coming to an end, on a sunny day, May 13, 2018, Geraldine wanted to help her daughter prepare for a test. On weekends, they usually did their homework together. Their hard work, that day they decided to take a break. They turned on the TV, made popcorn, and watched a movie while hugging Anna's cousins. Geraldine joined them and ordered pizza. The children played games while the adults sipped wine and enjoyed snacks. filling the house with a joyful atmosphere. May 14, 2018, began as usual. Geraldine got on the train headed to Dublin while Anna went to school. After lunch, she had an appointment with a psychologist. Patrick, who had retired by this time, took the opportunity to sleep a little longer. Classes ended at 4 p.m., and Anna called her mother, but there was no answer because Geraldine was at an important meeting. She wrote a message to her daughter, saying that she would call back soon. When Anna came home, Patrick was relaxing in the garden and heard the doorbell. A young man was standing at the threshold. He was the same age as Anna. Patrick was not expecting guests, and Anna was surprised to see the guy. Patrick had never seen him before. Anna's joy was obvious. She whispered something to the guy, grabbed her favorite sweater, and told her father that she would be back soon. Patrick reminded her that she needed to study, which she had forgotten because of the sudden guest. He saw them leave for the park. Patrick was not immediately worried since the park was only a 20-minute walk from their home. At 5:10 p.m., Geraldine returned home and tried to call Anna, but she did not answer. Not wanting to overreact, she thought Anna would be home soon. However, Anna did not return. Patrick told his wife that Anna had gone to the park with some guy. This was strange considering Anna's difficulties with communication. Geraldine immediately texted Anna, asking her to come home. When there was still no answer, it alarmed the parents, especially considering Anna's previous issues with bullying and her health problems. Concerned, Geraldine decided to go to the park, but there were no traces of Anna there. Geraldine and Patrick began searching the streets in their car, trying to find any signs of Anna. Their fear deepened when they realized they knew nothing about the young man Anna had been with. By their own efforts proved unsuccessful, by 9 p.m., they reported Anna's disappearance to the police, emphasizing that her lack of response to calls and messages was out of character for her. They also informing the police about the unknown guy. The police quickly tracked down the young man, whose name was Boy B. His family was surprised by the police's arrival. Investigators asked Boy B to describe Anna's whereabouts, and he said that they had walked together until 5:40 p.m. before he went home. After that, the police began searching for Anna. They combed the area and reviewed footage from surveillance cameras. Patrick and Geraldine provided photographs of Anna, including one in which she was wearing the black sweatshirt she had worn in that evening. Supporters gathered around Geraldine and Patrick, while the police carefully studied video recordings showing Boy B and Anna in the park around 5 p.m. At 5:14 p.m., they left the park through a different exit, but after that, Anna seemed to have vanished without a trace. Her disappearance became a mystery. Progress in the investigation was made when they managed to find a witness who saw Anna and Boy B walking through the park. Video footage captured Boy B walking alone through the park at 5:49 p.m. Under pressure from the police, Boy B admitted that he was with another friend named Boy A. Boy A liked Anna, and Boy B was acting as an intermediary between them. With this new information, investigators intensified their efforts and began broadcasting information about the search for Anna across all social networks, as well as in local newspapers. Simultaneously, they searched for Boy A. His backpack was found. Video footage showed him entering and exiting the park, but he had been absent for a long time. Some opinions suggested that Anna might have run away, but this theory was quickly dismissed. To resolve the mystery of Anna's disappearance, detectives organized a step-by-step recreation of the events that had occurred in the park that day alongside Boy B and Boy A, under their parents' supervision. The interaction between the boys raised the police's suspicions, so they were separated for individual interrogations. Boy B's testimony remained consistent. Boy B began the interview the previous day by repeating what he had told police the previous week, that Boy A had asked him to call Anna's house, in Leixlip, just outside Dublin in County Kildare, and bring her to meet him at St. Catherine's Park, so they could talk. And that he had left Anna with Boy A before going home to do his homework. During the investigation, police reviewed more than 700 hours of CCTV footage from the area around where Anna went missing. The detectives, Daly and Gannon, repeatedly told Boy B that the route he claimed they had taken that day did not match what was recorded by cameras in and around St. Catherine's Park, which is on the Lucan side of Leixlip, on the border between County Kildare and County Dublin. But Boy B stuck to his story, offering various explanations to police about the inconsistencies between the CCTV footage and his account. They said that, on a later occasion, they were attacked by two strange men, resulting in a fight where Boy A hit one of the men on the head. Both men ran away. He then showed the police the injuries they had inflicted, including scratches on his arms and legs and a cut on his face. These men could have been responsible for Anna's disappearance, so the detectives needed their descriptions. The police also seized the boy's belongings to conduct examinations for DNA evidence of the attackers. As the investigation progressed, police brought in specialized search units, including divers and a rescue team, to check nearby bodies of water. In total, 60 people were involved in the search for Anna, including volunteers and the Kriegel family. Anna's disappearance became a sensational news story. Her photo in a black sweatshirt became a symbol of her search. Near the park, there is Glenwood House, a derelict farmhouse designed by James Gondon in the 19th century, located in a town of Coldblow, west of Lucan. One of the eyewitnesses reported seeing young people and police entering it, so the police went there to investigate. The house was 2 stories, sat on 42 acres of land. It was in ruins, with the roofs and walls having collapsed. It is unclear why the police had not checked there earlier. They conducted a thorough examination of both the house itself and the fields behind it. The search began in the park, where they meticulously searched every bush before gradually moving toward the abandoned house. The police checked the utility room while the volunteers searched the main building. It was very dark inside as there was no light in the room. The policeman was taken aback by the pungent smell filling the room. Once his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he realized that in front of him lay a naked female body, next to which lay clothes and a broken telephone. On the floor, there were traces of blood beside a brick and a large branch. Judging by the clothing, it was the body of Anna. There were multiple wounds on her body, and her neck was wrapped in duct tape. Her hand lay as if she had been trying to tear off the duct tape herself. It was evident that she had fought valiantly for her life. Her naked body, wearing only socks, lay among broken bottles and garbage. Many questions arose about how this could have happened, who was responsible for this crime. Why was Anna in this building? This incident irrevocably changed the lives of Geraldine and Patrick. The death of their long-awaited and beloved daughter was an indescribable tragedy for them. The whole city learned the details of what happened, and most people were in shock. Glenwood House, located near the park where children had played peacefully, was now the scene of a terrible crime. An autopsy revealed that Anna had sustained about a dozen wounds all over her body, including bruises and cuts, primarily on her head, face, and neck. The cause of death was attributed to blunt force trauma to the head, as well as asphyxiation, indicating that Anna had been abused. Based on the traces of semen found, it remains unclear whether she was conscious during the assault. Her death occurred between 5:25 and 5:54 p.m., just a few minutes after she left the park. At the entrance to the building, she was struck with a heavy stick that had nails sticking out of it before being hit with a brick. Blood on the walls, and evidence suggested that the attacker dragged her body to the window, most likely to limit visibility for anyone outside. After collecting all the evidence, the police arrested 2 individuals. Boy B and Boy A, who were last seen with Anna, were suspected of the murder. In Boy A's backpack, a mask with the image of a zombie was found with traces of Anna's blood, along with gloves, shin guards, and knee pads. The semen found matched Boy A's DNA. Anna's blood was also located on his shoes and clothes. His mother believed he had been attacked and then washed his clothing. Boy A denied involvement in Anna's death despite the evidence found at the crime scene. No DNA was detected from Boy B, and there was no blood found on his belongings. During interrogation, Boy B admitted that he had seen Anna enter the abandoned house with Boy A but was unaware of his friend's intentions. Boy B wanted to approach the house but was frightened by screams at the entrance. He witnessed Boy A tearing off Anna's clothes and then turned to Boy B, his face reflecting the danger that prompted Boy B to remain silent. It later emerged that Boy A had shared his vile plans with Boy B. Both boys were released on bail pending a trial date, which angered local residents not only because they feared for their safety but also because the identities of the criminals had not been made public. Both boys came from respectable and successful families and had no criminal histories or psychological problems, which surprised the residents of the city. The hearing of their case took place on April 29, 2019. It was a closed hearing, attended by the parents of the defendants, as well as Geraldine and Patrick, who found the proceedings difficult but promised to defend their daughter to the end. The prosecutor stated that Boy B had lured Anna out of the house under the pretense of facilitating a meeting with Boy A, whom she liked, while Boy A took her to the abandoned house and abused her. The jury trial took place on June 18. Boy A was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 12 years. Boy B was also found guilty in Anna's death, receiving a 15-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 8 years, despite the lack of material evidence. According to the law, their identities must remain confidential. If released, they would be given new identification. However, the harshest sentence was borne by Anna's parents, as Geraldine stated that life without Anna had ceased to hold meaning. Patrick died on June 19, 2022, haunted by the guilt of allowing his daughter to go with a stranger that day. The tragic loss of Anna Kriegel left an indelible mark on her family and the community of Leixlip. Geraldine and Patrick, who had poured their love, hope into building a joyful life for their adopted daughter, were shattered by her brutal murder. The conviction of Boy A and Boy B, though a step toward justice, could not fill the void left by Anna's absence. Anna's memory lives on in the hearts of those who loved her. The case of Eurydice Dixon. Eurydice Dixon was born on November 10, 1995 in Melbourne, Australia. Her family consists of her parents and younger sister. When Eurydice was 7 years old, her mother died of substance abuse, leaving her father to care for her 2 young daughters. Eurydice's father worked hard to provide for the 2 sisters, and they lived in a small apartment. Eurydice is a quiet and polite person. Eurydice has a deep passion for the arts, especially drama. She pursued her passion at Deakin University, studying drama and actively participating in the theater troupe. Eurydice is a multi-talented person, not only a comedian, but also a writer who creates her own performances. In 2018, when Eurydice was only 22 years old, she stepped on stage at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. Her stand-up routine, At Home, I Feel Like a Tourist, was a huge hit, much to the delight of the audience. Eurydice was known to her friends as quiet and introverted, but also extremely intelligent for her age. Both her friends and the audience agreed that she had a natural talent for comedy. To hone her skills, Eurydice performed for free at local bars, using these opportunities to gain experience, gain fans. On Tuesday, June 12, 2018, Eurydice performed at a local bar just 3 miles from her home. That night, as usual, she humorously addressed gender equality and her concerns through her performance. After the performance, Eurydice met her boyfriend, Tony Magnuson, who was sitting in the audience. They spent time together at the bar, drank a can of soda together, and stopped at a nearby supermarket to buy groceries. At around 10:40 p.m., Tony got on the tram to go home. Eurydice walked home alone, blowing Tony a kiss and waving goodbye. Eurydice's walk home was about 3 miles long, taking her through streets, a park, and 3 soccer fields. It usually took her about an hour to get home. And Eurydice, having walked this route at night many times before, she felt safe because the streets were well lit. However, as Eurydice entered Princess Park, darkness enveloped her. To shorten the distance, she put on shoes and socks and walked barefoot on the grass. She crossed the park and the soccer field, just a short distance from her house. At 12:02 a.m., Eurydice texted her boyfriend Tony on Facebook, "I'm almost home. Where are you?" At approximately 2:50 a.m. on June 13th, a passerby found Eurydice unconscious on the soccer field at Princess Park. Although the passerby attempted CPR after calling an ambulance and the police, it was unfortunately too late. Eurydice had been strangled and had passed away. Fortunately, the area around Princess Park had several surveillance cameras that had recorded Eurydice walking alone through the park earlier. In the video, a young man can be seen about 100 feet away from her. He has blonde hair, a scraggly beard, and appears overweight, short, and stocky. To aid in the investigation, the police released the surveillance footage to local television stations and asked the public to help identify the suspect. That evening, James Todd, 19, contacted the police after his friends reported seeing his face on the news in connection with the death of Eurydice Dixon. James strongly denied any involvement in the incident and insisted that the person in the surveillance video was not him. The police asked James to come to the police station for questioning. At the police station, James denied any involvement, answered 660 questions, and insisted that he had nothing to do with the case. James also agreed to provide a DNA sample. A memorial was set up for the victim, Eurydice Dixon, where her body was found. People brought flowers to pay their respects, and a large crowd gathered to pay their respects. 5 days after her death, a vigil was held at the football stadium in memory of Eurydice. However, the night before the vigil, someone painted a giant 75-foot-long male genitalia on the lawn. Firefighters and city workers found it impossible to remove the paint and were forced to dig up and replace entire sections of the lawn, costing $20,000. The person responsible for the vandalism was identified as Andrew Null, a 29-year-old men's rights activist and Scientologist. Andrew admitted that his motive was to incite anger among feminists. During a subsequent interview, police told James that DNA evidence from the crime scene was being analyzed. James' demeanor changed. He looked down and stated that no further testing was necessary. James Todd confessed that he had been at Princess Park on the night of the tragedy, taking full responsibility for the murder and assault of Eurydice Dixon that led to her tragic death. In November 2018, James Todd gave a detailed account of his actions on June 12. He began with university classes in Broadmeadows, a suburb of Melbourne, which ended at 3 p.m. He then met 3 friends at the train station. They bought alcohol and supplies and took the train to Melbourne. The group spent time in Batman Park, sharing a bottle of alcohol until it was gone. Around 8 p.m., James purchased more cider and cannabis from people in the area. After one friend left, James and the other 2 friends returned to the train station, bought another bottle of alcohol and Coca-Cola, and took the train back to Broadmeadows. They got off at different stations, with James being the first to get off the train at Newmarket Station around 9 p.m. James Todd left Newmarket Station at 9:30 and walked down the street. At 10:43, he saw Eurydice outside a supermarket with her boyfriend Tony. After stopping at McDonald's, James returned to the same spot and saw Eurydice. She blew a kiss goodbye to her boyfriend, then started walking home. James felt attracted to Eurydice, even though he did not know her. James decided to follow her, staying about 150 feet away for an hour, walking about 3 miles across the city. Whenever Eurydice slowed down, James would stop to smoke. A surveillance camera recorded them passing the University of Melbourne. About 45 minutes after James began following her. As she neared her home, Eurydice texted her boyfriend Tony to let him know she was coming home. She was walking through Prince's Park at this time. At around midnight, Eurydice, after sending a text message to her boyfriend, was walking home across the 3rd soccer field when Eurydice was attacked from behind by James Todd. He grabbed her hair and skirt, pushed her to the ground, and then sat on her chest, grabbing her by the neck. In self-defense, Eurydice fought back by scratching James' face, neck, and shoulders. However, she was still unable to escape from James. After satisfying his desires, James strangled Eurydice until she died. According to his statement to the police, James said he thought Eurydice was drunk when he first saw her. He wanted to talk to Eurydice. However, Eurydice's autopsy showed no alcohol or illegal substances in her body. Medical examiners determined that Eurydice's cause of death was strangulation, accompanied by blunt force trauma to the head and other parts of the body. After committing the crime, James took Eurydice's phone and left the park. James found a temporary shelter and slept until 4 a.m. When he woke up, James checked the injuries on his body and face by taking a selfie with his phone. Then, James took a shower. He took off the t-shirt with the skull and special words, and left it there. Then, James returned to the area near Princess Park, where the police were investigating the case. James observed from a distance, not entering the park area. Then, James went home, buying coffee and cake on the way. At 7 a.m., James arrived home and started searching for information about Princess Park on the internet. Later, a friend of James said that James appeared on a TV show in a news report about the girl's murder. James decided to contact the police station after receiving a call from his friend. James' girlfriend, a 4-year relationship, recalls that during intimate moments, James tended to be rough with her. However, when she took a closer look at James' internet search history, she discovered that James was searching for violent and extreme content. James Todd, 19, is a working and studying student who aspires to build a career in the restaurant industry. He lives with his parents and often stays up late to watch adult videos. In particular, movies with tragic endings for female characters make him want to recreate them in real life. James grew up in very difficult living conditions. James' family consisted of 5 members, his parents and 3 sons, with James being the middle child. They lived in a chaotic and uncared for environment, with many pets and a kitchen that collapsed due to rotting floors. Food was often cooked in the bathroom on a simple stove, right next to the toilet that was often clogged. The entire house was a mess with cluttered furniture, trash and debris everywhere, with leftover food and garbage everywhere. James was rarely at home and often had to sleep on a desk in a classroom or on a park bench. His mother said that the poor condition of the house was partly due to her suffering from depression. However, James insisted that their house was always in a state of neglect, regardless of the cause. Information about the father's role in the family situation was not mentioned. Prior to the incident, James had been visiting the house less and instead spent more time at his girlfriend's house. His girlfriend noticed a change in his behavior and attributed it to the stress of college and his worries about his future. The police discovered that James had been diagnosed with mild autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as a child. As a teenager, James had been in and out of psychiatric care several times because his teachers were concerned about his antisocial behavior. However, it should be noted that autism or Asperger's syndrome can manifest in many different ways, but is not associated with dark or harmful sexual tendencies. In James' case, 2 psychiatrists worked with him and analyzed his situation thoroughly. The doctors concluded that James showed signs of sadistic personality disorder, a factor that may have contributed to the tragic events. Doctors believe that the combination of autism and sadistic elements in James's personality may have played a role in his tragic end. James' friends saw him as sociable, cheerful, and seemingly no different from other people. They noted that he was able to apologize, distinguish right from wrong, and behave rationally. The judge who heard the case concluded that James Todd intentionally killed Eurydice Dixon, motivated by perverse desires and the intention to act out his perverted fantasies. As a result, on September 2, 2019, James Todd was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 35 years. James Todd's father, Jason Todd, took to social media to express his condolences to Eurydice Dixon's family. In it, Jason shared his pain and anxiety at not being able to see his son again after the incident. Jason also revealed that he had faced a lot of abuse and criticism on social media. However, Jason later deleted all of these posts. Meanwhile, James' legal team was trying to appeal James' life sentence. They argued that the sentence was too harsh for James, who was 19 at the time and had no previous criminal record. The lawyers also cited numerous testimonies from people around him who described James as a good and kind person. The lawyers also pointed out that James fully admitted his guilt and expressed remorse. They also pointed out that James was autistic and had lived in poor conditions before the crime. However, the appeal was ultimately rejected. Police investigating the case say James is now living in significantly better conditions than his previous home. James still feels remorse for his actions. James' time in prison was harder than other prisoners. Psychiatrists say James would pose a serious threat to women if released. Following the death of Eurydice Dixon, the bar where she last performed comedy decided to cancel its comedy nights on Tuesdays in her memory. To continue Eurydice's legacy, the Melbourne government has introduced grants to support emerging female comedians. Andrew, who desecrated the Eurydice Dixon Memorial, was convicted and sentenced to 5 months in prison. Following the tragic death of Eurydice Dixon, police have advised women to be more careful at night, avoid walking alone, and always carry their phones. The case of Alice Adams and Tibor Vass. Alice Adams and Tibor Vass were colleagues at the Radisson Blu Edwardian Heathrow Hotel. Living just 6 miles from the hotel, Alice had joined the team 3 weeks prior and quickly formed friendships with her co-workers, particularly Tibor. Born and raised in Budapest, Hungary, Tibor was a people person who loved music, playing almost every instrument, with the piano being his favorite. He had taught his younger sister, Isabella, to play piano, and they would often perform together for their parents. Tragedy struck in 2007 when Tibor's father passed away, leaving the family struggling to cope. Tibor, then a teenager, took on a more significant role in supporting his mother, Rosalia, and younger sister. At 15, he started working full-time to help alleviate his mother's burden. He later applied to the University of Budapest in 2008, hoping a college degree would lead to a better job and greater financial stability for his family. Despite his exceptional talent, Tibor was unfortunately denied admission to the university. Tibor discussed his plans to move to Great Britain with his mother, who seemed to support the idea. In July 2010, at the age of 19, Tibor relocated to the United Kingdom and settled in London. He began working at the Radisson Blu Edwardian Heathrow Hotel, where he enjoyed his job, responsibilities, and interactions with colleagues and new clients. Tibor quickly formed a bond with Alice, a talented musician, as they often found common topics to discuss. Both Tibor and Alice worked as receptionists at the hotel, along with Attila Ban, a 31-year-old who had been employed there the longest. Attila was recognized as the hotel's best employee in 2010. As Tibor and Attila were both from Hungary, they developed a close relationship. The hotel provided accommodation for its new employees, and Attila and Tibor lived in a company apartment behind the hotel. This arrangement was convenient, as it saved them money and reduced their commute time. Tibor was thrilled to be in England, but he didn't abandon his plans for higher education. He reapplied to the university in Budapest and was accepted this time around. Overjoyed, he had to return to Hungary in August 2011. To bid him farewell, a small party was organized on August 9, 2011, attended by Tibor, Attila, Alice, and other hotel employees. The next day, the trio was scheduled to work, but none of them showed up. Their colleagues raised the alarm when they failed to report for work at 7 a.m., and the police were notified at 7:53 a.m. Upon arriving at the house, the police found the door unlocked and the interior quiet. When an officer opened the door, he was met with a disturbing scene. Alice lay on the living room floor, her face covered by a pillow, with 22 stab wounds on her body, as later confirmed by the medical examiners. In the bedroom, Tibor's naked body was found on the bed, having died from 2 stab wounds to the heart. Attila, however, was nowhere to be found. The police surrounded the house to secure the area, and investigators and forensic experts started their investigation. As they examined the crime scene, they discovered that the bed where Tibor's body was found was not where he was actually killed. The bed was too tidy, indicating that Tibor had met his fate elsewhere. It appeared that the perpetrator had initially wounded him, removed his clothes, cleaned his body, and then placed him on the bed. Upon further inspection, the apartment was found to contain empty alcohol bottles and illicit substances, suggesting that they had been used during a party. Police officers thoroughly searched the house, the surrounding area, and the attic for Attila Ban, but he was nowhere to be found. His personal belongings, including his papers, were still in the apartment. As a result, Attila became the prime suspect in the investigation. While forensic experts continued to analyze the crime scene, investigators began questioning Attila's co-workers at the hotel. The staff reported that Attila had taken a particular interest in Tibor, a new employee from the same country, immediately showing him around and helping him settle in. Attila even went so far as to adjust his work schedule to match Tibor's. Tibor was a young and attractive man who attracted a lot of female attention. However, investigators discovered that Attila had romantic feelings for Tibor, which he openly expressed. According to the hotel staff, Tibor had rejected Attila's advances, making Attila unhappy. Things took a turn for the worse when Alice joined the hotel staff 3 weeks before her death, and Tibor started paying attention to her. Attila became jealous, despite knowing that Tibor was only interested in women. The investigation raised an important question: could Attila have committed the murder out of jealousy and unrequited love? A disturbing Facebook post from Attila, made before the police discovered the bodies, suggested that he was indeed involved. At 6:23 a.m., Attila had posted, "I would like to wake up from that nightmare." Friends commented on the post, expressing their concern, but Attila never responded. This message further solidified the investigators' suspicions that Attila Ban was responsible for the deaths of his colleagues. The number of stab wounds provided a clear indication of what had transpired. Alice sustained 22 stab wounds, while Tibor was stabbed only twice. Furthermore, the positioning of the victims was telling. Alice was found on the floor with a pillow over her face, while Tibor was discovered on the bed. When investigators spoke with the other people who had been at the apartment earlier that night, they learned that Attila, Tibor, and Alice had been the only ones left behind. This suggested that the tragic events had unfolded after the others had left, in the hours leading up to dawn. The news of Alice's death sent shockwaves through the families of both the victim and the perpetrator. The Adams family, Alice's family, released a statement in which her mother, Sarah, paid a heartfelt tribute to her daughter. She expressed her overwhelming grief, saying, "My heart is shattered into a million pieces. I will carry this sadness with me for the rest of my life. I deeply miss my beloved Alice and would do anything to have one more chance to hug her tightly and see her bright smile. The loss of my child has awakened intense emotions within our family, sorrow, anger, and a sense of devastation that we can hardly bear. As a mother, I feel that I failed to protect my child, and that realization is something I must confront every day. Not knowing exactly what happened to Alice on the night of her murder is a constant torment. I would rather face the harsh truth than be left to imagine the sequence of events that led to her death. Alice was an extraordinary and unique individual who brought so much love, joy, passion, and kindness into the lives of everyone she touched. Her loss is a tragedy that cannot be put into words. Meanwhile, police were searching for Attila Ban, but he seemed to have disappeared without a trace. When they attempted to track his phone, they found that it was transmitting signals from the same area as the hotel, which was unusual. It was later revealed that Attila was actually much closer than anyone had suspected. After spending 2 days examining the crime scene, the investigative team left the house, only to have the forensic team return later to conduct additional tests. Upon re-entering the house, they found that the door they had left unlocked was now locked from the inside. Inside the room, they discovered Attila Ban lying on the bed, intoxicated and wounded after attempting to harm himself with scissors and a knife. The investigators questioned Attila, but he responded bizarrely, using gestures to convey his thoughts. He was then taken to the hospital for medical attention. Unbeknownst to the investigators, Attila had created a hiding space within the sofa bed where Tibor Vasa's body was found. To create this makeshift hiding spot, he had made a slit in the bed's base, grabbed a phone, several bottles of water, and climbed inside. Throughout the investigation, Attila had been secretly watching and listening to the police through the holes he had made. Attila Ban was arrested at the hospital as the main suspect in the crime. His trial began on July 9, 2012, and during the proceedings, details of the heinous crime were revealed. The party had escalated out of control after Tibor, Alice, and Attila were left alone in the apartment. Prosecutors confirmed that there was a consensual physical encounter between the three, with DNA evidence found on Miss Adams' body. The evening took a devastating turn. Attila claimed to have no memory of the events that followed, only recalling waking up the next morning to find Alice and Tibor lifeless. Overcome with guilt and remorse, he considered taking his own life but was too afraid to do so alone. The court learned that Attila had been consumed by jealousy towards Tibor, particularly after a team-building event where he had thrown a tantrum because Tibor was in a photograph and he was not. The situation worsened when Attila discovered that Tibor had been accepted into a university program in Hungary and would be leaving the UK soon. The final trigger was likely witnessing Tibor and Alice kissing, which sent Attila into a fit of rage, ultimately leading him to take the lives of his two friends. Prosecutor Richard Whittam revealed in court that Attila Ban was discovered naked on a single bed, with injuries to his wrists, forearm, and neck. It was later found that he had been hiding in the base of a double bed. Remarkably, he had managed to conceal himself and remain undetected throughout the entire investigation, including the pathologist's examination, the removal of the bodies, and the crime scene examiner's investigation. When questioned about the oversight, Detective Inspector John Finch defended the police, stating that it would be impractical and potentially damaging to lift up every bed in search of people. He explained that this could result in the loss of crucial forensic evidence and was not a standard procedure in such cases. Rosalia, the mother of Tibor Vas, paid a heartfelt tribute to her son, remembering him as a friendly, outgoing, and talented young man. She recalled his childhood interests in music, arts, and sports, as well as his passion for photography, which led him to invest in a professional camera with his first paycheck. According to Rosalia, Tibor had many friends in both Hungary and the UK who appreciated his kind and supportive nature. She said that, on August 11th, I received devastating news. My 20-year-old son, Tibor, and his friend Alice had been murdered. The killer was a shocking revelation, Tibor's own friend, who I had trusted to look out for my son. This friend had personally promised to keep Tibor safe, which made the news even more difficult to accept. Days before the murder, I had taken comfort in knowing that Tibor had found a mature and intelligent friend in London. Now, I was consumed by grief and struggled to comprehend the tragedy. The subsequent police investigation and trial only added to my suffering, forcing me to relive the horrors of that fateful night. The pain and loss my family experiences will stay with us for the rest of our lives. The perpetrator, Attila Ban, pleaded guilty but claimed he couldn't recall the details of the crime. On July 18, 2012, the jury delivered a guilty verdict after just 5 hours of deliberation. A month later, on August 17, Attila Ban was sentenced to 2 life terms. He will have to serve 26 years before being eligible for parole. On the evening of October 24, 2009, 58-year-old Christy Marks, a successful professional and caring mother, set out from her home filled with hope. She was on her way to reconnect with her daughter, Taylor Marks, who was 20 years old. She had been adopted by Christy years earlier. Earlier that day, Taylor had called Christy, asking her to pick her up from her boyfriend Brian Smith's house. This request was a surprising sign of reconciliation after a difficult period between them. Around 7 p.m., Christy arrived at Brian's house, located in Akron, Ohio, an area known for its high crime rates and general unease. Despite her concerns, Christy parked her car, approached the door, and knocked. Taylor answered. Christy, unable to hide her happiness, embraced her. There was no apparent tension between them. Shortly after, Brian joined them to help escort both women back to Christy's car. To Christy, everything felt normal, even though the neighborhood made her uneasy. As they were heading to the car, the situation turned dire. A man suddenly appeared behind them, wielding a knife. The attack was quick and brutal. Christy was stabbed multiple times in the chest and face before she could defend herself and collapsed on the ground. Taylor screamed, hurried to call emergency services. In the recording of her call, she was heard pleading for help and explaining that her mother had been attacked. While she was on the phone with the dispatcher, Brian took the phone from her. He calmly provided their location and described what happened, stating that the attacker had fled, though his calm demeanor was unsettling given the violent situation. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Christy was alive but in critical condition and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors worked hard to save her. Unfortunately, despite their efforts, Christy Marks was pronounced dead shortly after arriving. The main cause of death was the multiple stab wounds inflicted with great force. At the crime scene, law enforcement noticed several discrepancies. Christy's purse, which contained her belongings, cash, keys, and documents, was found untouched near where the attack occurred. This was unusual for a robbery. Additionally, a bloody knife, believed to be the weapon used, was found in nearby bushes. These discoveries raised doubts about the witnesses' accounts and hinted at potential deeper motives for the crime. The police started questioning everyone involved: Taylor, Brian, and Brian's friend, Troy Purdy II, who had been in the house during the attack. Their stories were inconsistent and contradictory. Taylor reported only seeing the silhouette of the attacker, describing someone in red sneakers and a flannel shirt. Brian claimed he tried to intervene and got injured during the struggle with the assailant, while Troy maintained he never left the house and saw nothing. Given their statements, investigators soon suspected that none of them were being truthful. Evidence from the crime scene, such as blood trails and the positioning of the weapon, indicated that the crime was staged. Authorities thought the attack was not random, it appeared to be well planned. During the first night of the investigation, detectives focused on one critical question: why was Christy targeted, and which of the people present knew the truth about what happened? Taylor Marks was born on March 29, 1989. Her biological mother chose to place her into foster care right after her birth, leaving her under the care of the adoption system. Little is known about her biological family, except that Taylor has at least one older sibling, although she was the only one placed in foster care. This marked the start of a new chapter in her life, one that, despite its difficult beginnings, eventually brought her warmth and love. A few months later, Taylor joined the Marks family. Bruce and Christy Marks, a couple who had always dreamed of having a child but were unable to conceive, felt she was destined to be part of their family the moment they first saw her. At that time, the Marks family was financially secure. Bruce worked in a senior role at a major telecommunications company, while Christy efficiently managed their home life and family activities. They had a large, supportive extended family that included grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who all loved, cared for Taylor. Bruce and Christy were committed to her upbringing, providing her with a high-quality education at prestigious private schools, enrolling her in dance classes, and encouraging her involvement in various extracurricular activities. As a result, Taylor had access to opportunities that many of her peers did not. Taylor had a particularly strong bond with Bruce, who was seen by family friends as her hero, always fulfilling her wishes and offering unwavering support. In contrast, her relationship with Christy was more challenging. Christy was stricter and had higher expectations. While these differing parenting styles did not create major problems during Taylor's early years, tensions began to rise as she entered her teenage years. Christy's increasing oversight and demands led to frequent conflicts between them, causing strain in their relationship. During this time, when Taylor was around 10 years old, Bruce and Christy experienced marital problems, ultimately resulting in their divorce. Taylor reported that her parents' separation had a significant emotional impact on her. She felt that Christy started directing her frustrations towards Taylor, worsening their relationship. A significant turning point in Taylor's life occurred in 2002 when she was only 13 years old. Her father, Bruce, unexpectedly passed away after falling into a diabetic coma. This loss was extremely painful for Taylor, as she not only lost her father but also her main source of emotional support. Shortly after Bruce's death, her grandfather, with whom she was very close, also passed away. These two losses deeply affected Taylor. Following Bruce's death, Christy inherited a large estate, including a considerable amount of money. She decided to use part of this inheritance to buy a new home in Akron, Ohio, hoping that a change of environment would help them start anew. However, despite this move, Taylor's emotional well-being worsened. She became more isolated, struggled academically, and had increasing conflicts with Christy. Christy wanted to support her daughter, but her approach often felt too controlling. To make up for the loss of Bruce, she tried to provide Taylor with material comforts, going out of her way to give her everything she wanted and more. Despite this, their emotional bond continued to weaken. Christy wished for Taylor to take responsibility, complete her education, and eventually continue the family legacy. However, Taylor was uninterested in these plans, instead dreaming of breaking free from what she perceived as imposed expectations. As Taylor entered her teenage years, her desire for independence conflicted with her mother's expectations, leading to increasing arguments that intensified over time. Taylor saw her mother as a constant source of pressure, and tensions rose each year. Concerned about her daughter's falling grades, Taylor's lack of focus in school, and apparent disregard for her future, Christy attempted to enforce strict rules to guide Taylor in what she believed was the right path. Taylor perceived her mother's actions as a way to control her life, which made her want to rebel even more. Christy's constant comments about Taylor's looks, clothing choices, and friends further strained their relationship. High school was especially tough for Taylor. Even with the privileges her mother provided, she started using them carelessly. Rather than concentrating on her studies, she chose to hang out with friends, ignoring Christy's efforts to keep her disciplined. Although Christy tried different approaches to guide her daughter, these attempts only pushed them further apart. In 2008, Taylor graduated from high school. A significant turning point occurred. Although Christy offered financial support and opportunities for Taylor to attend any college, Taylor was not interested in furthering her education. Christy encouraged her to at least give it a try, which led Taylor to enroll at a university in Akron. However, just a month into her first semester, she decided to drop out. This choice was devastating for Christy, highlighting the growing divide between their visions for Taylor's future. When persuasion failed, Christy opted for a more direct approach. She presented Taylor with an ultimatum: either find the job and support herself or move out of the house. This expectation aligned with American cultural norms, where young adults are urged to take responsibility for their lives as they reach adulthood. Unfortunately, Taylor interpreted her mother's words as harsh and threatening, escalating the conflict between them. The situation worsened in May 2009 when Taylor met Brian Smith, a 21-year-old known for his rebellious nature. Brian lived with his mother and sister in a low-income neighborhood. Taylor was attracted to him, viewing him as a way to break free from her mother's control. People who knew Brian warned that he had a bad temper and needed to dominate his relationships, but Taylor had no change of mind. Christy disapproved of the relationship, worried about Brian's behavior and its potential impact on her daughter. She tried to stop Taylor from seeing him and even forbade him from visiting their home, but this only made Taylor more determined to pursue the relationship. Soon after, Taylor moved in with Brian, leaving her mother's house behind. However, life with Brian was not as she had hoped. Initially, their relationship appeared promising, but it quickly became evident that Brian was controlling and aggressive. Taylor dealt with jealousy, control, and frequent bursts of anger from him. Even so, she refused to return home, seeing it as a sign of weakness. Concerned for Taylor's well-being, Christy continued to support her by providing essential items and staying in touch, hoping that Taylor would come to realize her mistakes. The tension between Christy and Taylor reached a peak when Christy offered Taylor a chance to return home. She could come back if she either continued her education or found a job. To help her, Christy also offered to provide a car, an apartment, and a job at her company. However, Taylor showed little interest in these options. Despite the challenges, her tumultuous relationship with Brian continued. Christy hoped that, in time, Taylor would realize her mistakes and return home to take on more responsibilities. Sadly, this hope would never materialize. As the years passed, the rift in their relationship widened, leading to a tragic outcome. When Taylor moved in with Brian, she thought she was gaining the freedom she had long desired. However, this freedom quickly turned into a series of restrictions. Life with Brian was very different from what she had expected. He enforced strict rules and scrutinized every aspect of her life. Taylor, who was used to a certain degree of comfort and independence, found herself in a situation where she had to obey Brian's demands. Brian's control over Taylor grew increasingly extreme. He frequently checked her phone, read her text messages, and closely monitored where she went. Even her conversations with Christy became a source of conflict. Brian persuaded Taylor that her mother was trying to manipulate her and limit her independence. His influence intensified the rift between Taylor and Christy, who kept trying to stay in touch and maintain their communication. In Brian's home, Taylor felt completely isolated. He not only limited her social interactions but also manipulated her emotions, making her believe he was the only one who truly understood her. During arguments, Brian exhibited aggressive behavior, breaking things and making threats. After these outbursts, he demanded her total loyalty and constantly reminded her of how much she depended on him. The situation was made worse by Brian's family. His mother, Tammy, chose not to intervene, effectively supporting Brian's behavior. His younger sister also contributed to controlling Taylor by watching her closely when Brian was not around, creating an environment where Taylor's every action was monitored. Taylor's financial ties to her mother were another significant issue in her relationship with Brian. Knowing about Christy's wealth and Taylor's potential inheritance, Brian was determined to keep control over her. He often blamed her mother for her problems, driving a wedge between them. Under Brian's influence, Taylor started avoiding her mother. Even when Christy came to help her daughter, Brian stayed distant and dismissive, discouraging Taylor from accepting her mother's support, insisting they could manage on their own. Despite Brian's efforts, Christy continued to care for Taylor, providing her with necessities and encouraging her to return home. By the summer of 2009, the tension between Taylor, Brian, and Christy had intensified. After months of living with Brian, Taylor had become completely reliant on him. As Brian's control grew and his aggression escalated, a new plan emerged, something that initially felt unlikely but quickly became more tangible. This idea was driven by increasing pressure, shared dissatisfaction, and financial motivations. The plan was to eliminate Christy permanently, which would give them access to her assets. For Taylor, this was a way to cut her last connections to her mother and achieve financial independence. For Brian, it was a chance to secure his control over Taylor and use her inheritance to improve his own situation. The idea of committing a crime started to spread among their close friends. Brian's 19-year-old friend, Troy Purdy, who often visited their home, joined these discussions. Being younger and impressionable, Troy was seen as the perfect choice for the plan. What began as jokes or hypothetical situations eventually grew more serious. The planning took place gradually, with careful attention to detail. Brian and Taylor discussed how to make the crime appear as if it were a robbery or a random attack. They decided that any evidence left at the scene should suggest spontaneous violence rather than a planned crime. Troy was selected to carry out the act to keep Brian and Taylor from being directly linked to it. Troy agreed to participate because of his loyalty to Brian and didn't question the plan when asked. In return for his involvement, Troy was promised $5,000, which Taylor expected to come from her inheritance once the legal matters were settled. They paid special attention to choosing a weapon. Taylor mentioned that Brian's mother, Tammy, even bought a knife for the plan, but it was later rejected due to its size and weight. Eventually, Troy was tasked with finding a suitable weapon. He chose a lightweight knife that was easy to hide and carry. A crucial part of their preparation was observing Christie's habits. They knew Christie frequently visited Brian's house to see Taylor, making her an easy target since she usually came alone under the pretense of picking up her daughter. This detail was included in their plan. They envisioned Christie arriving at the house, and the attack happening as she was leaving or near her car. Just before the plan was implemented, Taylor took a crucial step to ensure everything would go smoothly. She called her mother and asked for a ride home, implying she wanted to return. This call was intended to put Christie at ease, making her less suspicious about Taylor's true intentions. Throughout their discussions, Taylor appeared confident and committed. According to Troy, she was not just involved in planning but was also determined to follow through. Although her relationship with her mother was strained, taking such a significant action was a big deal. Taylor explained her involvement by referring to years of resentment and a strong desire to break free from her mother's control. Meanwhile, Brian kept the process on track, persuading Taylor that this was the only way to solve her issues. By the evening of October 24, 2009, everything was in place. Taylor was aware that the plan was shifting from theory to action. Taylor remained calm and focused, convinced this was the best way forward for them. For Taylor and Brian, it represented the start of a new chapter in their lives. That day began as an ordinary day for Christie Marks but ended in tragedy. That evening, Taylor called her mother to say she wanted to come home. For Christie, this unexpected phone call brought joy after months of tension. She viewed it as a chance to reconnect with her daughter. Christie quickly packed her things, got in her car, and drove to Brian's house, unaware that she was heading into a carefully orchestrated crime. Christie arrived at around 7 p.m. and parked her car near the house. She walked to the front door, where Taylor welcomed her with a smile and a hug, signaling a potential reconciliation. Brian watched from a distance as they interacted, while Troy stayed inside to avoid raising any suspicion. As Christie and Taylor walked toward the car, with Brian following closely behind, everything seemed normal. However, everything changed when they reached the car. Troy suddenly emerged from the house with a knife and attacked Christie. She had no time to react as Troy stabbed her multiple times in the chest and face. The assault was quick and brutal, leaving Christie unable to defend herself. She collapsed to the ground with over 10 stab wounds. This was not a robbery, it was a targeted attack intended to kill her. Taylor stood nearby, observing the attack unfold. Later, she claimed she didn't intervene because she was scared of Troy, but surveillance footage revealed that she showed no signs of panic or distress. Brian also did not intervene, insisting that his role was to protect the women, yet he took no action to stop Troy. After the attack, Taylor called emergency services, her voice tense as she urgently requested an ambulance. Brian then took over the call, acting as the coordinator. He calmly provided the dispatcher with details about their location and the type of assistance required. His unemotional tone raised suspicions among law enforcement officials who later listened to the call. Troy, the attacker, discarded the knife in a nearby bush and fled the scene. He later claimed that he had acted out of emotional distress, but evidence suggested his actions were premeditated. Following Christie Marks's tragic death, the investigation started right away. Police arrived at the scene within minutes of the emergency call. They found evidence that raised immediate doubts: a knife hidden in the bushes, Christie's purse untouched with all her belongings, and no signs of robbery. These details did not support the theory of a random attack. Investigators began by interviewing the main individuals involved: Taylor, Brian, and Troy. They were interviewed separately to avoid any possibility of collaboration. However, their stories did not match and raised suspicions as the police noticed inconsistencies in their statements. The crucial evidence was obtained from surveillance footage near the crime scene. The video showed Taylor and Brian standing close by while Troy attacked Christie. Neither of them attempted to stop the assault. This footage became a pivotal element in the investigation. With this evidence, detectives brought the suspects back for additional questioning. Under the strain of the evidence presented, Troy was the first to confess. He stated that the attack was planned in advance, claimed that Taylor had orchestrated the scheme. Troy explained that she had approached him and Brian with the plan, assuring them of a financial reward from her expected inheritance after her mother's death. Troy admitted that his role was to carry out the attack while Brian was tasked with creating an alibi by making it look like a robbery. He also confessed to intentionally injuring Brian to strengthen the staged scenario's credibility. His admission completely contradicted Taylor's earlier assertion that the attack was random. When Brian heard about Troy's confession, he changed his story as well. He supported Troy's claim that Taylor had come up with the plan but denied being actively involved. Brian stated that while he didn't agree with the attack, he felt he couldn't stop Taylor and Troy. He also claimed he didn't know the full details of the plan until the last moment, which appeared to minimize his involvement. Faced with growing evidence and accusations, Taylor initially denied her participation. However, her account became more inconsistent over time. Investigators observed that she started contradicting herself, and her behavior indicated she was trying to conceal the truth. Eventually, under the pressure of the evidence, Taylor admitted to discussing the plan with Brian and Troy. The investigation revealed that the crime was carefully planned, with every detail considered, from selecting the weapon to staging fake injuries. The financial motive mentioned by both Troy and Brian became a key focus for the prosecution. Taylor confessed that her ongoing conflict with her mother influenced her decision, but she maintained that she didn't expect the situation to end in tragedy. The police quickly understood what had occurred. Taylor Marks, Brian Smith, and Troy Purdy were arrested and charged in connection with Christy Marks's death. While this marked the end of the initial investigation phase, the legal proceedings were just beginning. The court would assess their levels of responsibility and determine their sentences. The trial for Christy Marks's case started in late 2009. The defendants faced intense public attention due to the violent nature of the crime and their connections to the victim. The prosecution presented a strong case supported by extensive evidence, witness testimonies, and video recordings. A key piece of evidence was the surveillance footage showing Taylor and Brian standing by without attempting to intervene during the attack on Christy. Moreover, Troy's confession, which detailed the conspiracy and his involvement in the crime, played a crucial role in the case. Investigators shared text messages from Taylor's phone where she discussed her troubled relationship with her mother and her wish to be independent. They also uncovered evidence of a financial motive, noting that Taylor was set to inherit a significant sum after Christy's death. Christy possessed considerable assets, including real estate, a business, and savings. Defense attorneys for Taylor, Brian, and Troy tried to argue that their clients were not fully responsible for the crime. Taylor's lawyer insisted that she was heavily influenced by Brian and lacked the ability to act on her own. He attributed her vulnerability to the emotional turmoil following her father's death and the pressure from her mother. Brian claimed he had no direct role in the crime, with his lawyer stating he was shocked and unaware of the plan until it unfolded, preventing him from intervening. Meanwhile, Troy, who initially confessed, tried to alter his story during the trial, asserting that he acted under Brian's coercion. During the proceedings, Troy accepted a plea deal to admit his guilt and testify against the others, resulting in a life sentence without parole, which spared him from the death penalty. Realizing her situation was dire, Taylor also pleaded guilty during the hearings. She gave a heartfelt statement where she expressed regret for her actions, explaining that her conflicts with her mother and the influence of Brian led her to take part in the crime. However, the prosecutors insisted that her involvement was intentional and well-planned. Brian, on the other hand, initially claimed he was not guilty but later acknowledged his role when presented with undeniable evidence. He argued that his participation was minor and that he never meant for the crime to happen, but the court saw this as an effort to minimize his accountability. In 2010, the court issued its verdicts. Taylor Marks and Brian Smith were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy, resulting in life sentences without the possibility of parole. Although Taylor expressed remorse, her statement about losing control was viewed as an attempt to reduce her sentence. Troy, under the terms of his plea deal, also received a life sentence. However, his subsequent behavior in prison became concerning when he was charged in 2015 for possessing a weapon, which raised concerns about his ability to rehabilitate. The sentencing had a profound impact on everyone involved in the tragedy. This situation serves as a stark reminder of how personal conflicts and impulsive choices can ruin even the strongest bonds. Taylor then was relocated to a women's correctional facility in Ohio. Throughout her early years in prison, she remained isolated, choosing to avoid interaction with the media and other inmates. In 2021, Taylor participated in a television interview regarding her case. During the interview, she acknowledged that her actions were serious but continued to justify them by discussing her conflicts with her mother and her emotional struggles. Although she had previously expressed remorse in court, Taylor reiterated her criticisms of her mother, calling her strict and unsupportive after her father's death. She also expressed a desire for her case to be reviewed, hoping for a chance at freedom. These statements caused controversy, with many perceiving them as indications of insincerity. Currently, Taylor spends her time involved in rehabilitation programs and working within the prison. Some view her as manipulative and insincere, while others believe she is seeking meaning in her life while incarcerated. Meanwhile, Brian, who is also serving a life sentence in a high-security prison, has kept a low profile since his conviction. He has avoided media interviews and has not publicly addressed his involvement in the crime. Prison staff describe Brian as a difficult inmate who often engages in conflicts and displays aggression. His name came up again in 2017 when reports revealed he had gotten into a fight with another inmate. This incident highlighted that his aggressive behavior had not improved since his sentencing. Like Taylor, Brian symbolizes the tragic inability to accept responsibility and the harmful impact one person can have on others. Troy, who played a direct role in the crime, was also sent to a maximum security prison. Even though he received a plea deal, his conduct in prison showed he hadn't changed. Since the incident, Troy has seldom been covered in the media. While some viewed his involvement in the crime as a result of being manipulated by Brian and Taylor, his readiness to carry out the fatal attacks raised concerns about his potential for rehabilitation. The memory of Christy Marks endures among her friends and surviving family. Her senior care business was sold after her death, with part of the proceeds going to charities that support victims of domestic violence. Christy is often remembered by her loved ones as a strong and compassionate woman who devoted her life to helping others. Years after Christy's passing, her story remains a warning about the need for open communication in families and the value of seeking professional help when conflicts escalate. The street was calm and peaceful late at night. Suddenly, the calm was broken by a noise. What happened next was shockingly violent and seemed carefully planned. The most troubling part was that she had warned others about the possibility of this event, but no one intervened. Alessandra Matuzzi was born and raised in Italy and spent most of her life in the fashion industry. At 56, she worked as a sales representative for a boutique specializing in women's clothing. Those who knew her well described her as reliable, thoughtful, and elegant. She approached every task with precision and grace, whether assisting a customer or caring for a loved one. Alessandra was particularly known for her deep compassion. Her sense of duty went beyond her job. She had been her father's main caregiver during his final illness, providing unwavering support until his death. This experience left her emotionally exhausted. Afterward, she became withdrawn, avoiding social interactions and hesitating to form new relationships. Alessandra's daily life centered around her mother, who lived in a care home and needed constant care. She followed a regular routine that included frequent visits to her mother and daily phone calls with her younger sister, Stefania, with whom she had a strong bond. Although Alessandra was reserved, she maintained an online presence that showcased her life. Her social media accounts featured images of family gatherings, stylish work outfits, and quiet moments with her pet. She preferred calm environments and meaningful relationships over large social events. Everything changed in the summer of 2021 when she encountered a young man named Giovanni Padovani on social media. Giovanni, aged 27, was originally from Sicily. He lived an active lifestyle as a professional football player and part-time model. His social media was lively and well followed, showcasing training sessions, travel adventures, and insights into photo shoots. His online persona was polished and charismatic, earning him admiration from many, particularly women. His friendly, approachable demeanor suggested he was both confident and down-to-earth. Despite their age difference, Alessandra and Giovanni connected easily from the start. Giovanni was respectful and kind, showing no signs of arrogance. As time went on, their messages became more frequent, transitioning from simple greetings to deeper conversations about their lives and feelings. Their digital exchanges developed into genuine emotional connections, and they began communicating almost daily. They sharing photos, life updates, and words of support. Eventually, Giovanni planned a visit to Alessandra in Bologna, where she lived. During his visit, he took the time to understand her world without being intrusive. One gesture that stood out was his offer to visit Alessandra's mother at the care home. This thoughtful act left a lasting impression, showing that he cared not only about Alessandra but also about the life she had built and the people she cherished. In the months that followed, Giovanni kept visiting Bologna. He and Alessandra spent peaceful moments together, walking around the city, cooking, and doing errands. He joined her in her daily activities and seemed to appreciate the slower pace of her life. He appeared to genuinely care for her, capturing their moments together in photos he occasionally shared online. In private messages, he expressed his support and affection for her. To onlookers, their relationship might have seemed surprising yet meaningful, as two very different lives came together. Shortly after the new year, the sense of security began to fade. Giovanni's behavior changed. He started calling more frequently, sometimes multiple times a day, and his questions became highly specific. What had once seemed like affectionate curiosity turned into suspicion. He wanted to know who she was talking to, what she was doing, and why. Their conversations morphed into interrogations filled with doubt. Then, he began accusing her of hiding things. There was no basis for his claims. His obsession extended beyond Alessandra. He started calling Stefania directly, trying to persuade her to adopt his distorted perspective. While he initially sought her support, his behavior grew increasingly erratic. His tone shifted from persuasive to aggressive. Stefania remembered how he used to yell during phone calls, his voice loud and full of accusations. Eventually, she cut all contact with him. In contrast, Alessandra chose to stay connected, believing that the difficult times would eventually pass. She tried to avoid arguments and calm the situation down in hopes of restoring balance. However, the man who had once seemed emotionally understanding became more controlling. His jealousy took hold, and even minor social media interactions, likes, photos, comments, sparked new conflicts. He demanded explanations for every little thing. As his obsession grew, so did his need for control. He began calling her at all hours of the night, and his messages shifted from sweet to overwhelming, and often filled with frustration or regret. Alessandra's sense of peace was shattered. His unpredictable moods drained her, and his expectations were unrealistic. Yet, he continued to intrude into her life in increasingly invasive ways. In early 2022, the situation worsened for Alessandra. After one of her visits, she discovered she was locked out of her email and social media accounts. When she tried to recover them, she found that the new passwords contained clues and references linked to Giovanni, making her suspect he had accessed her computer. The more she investigated, the more alarming things became. Her WhatsApp account was connected to a foreign device, and spyware was later found on her phone. This spyware allowed Giovanni not only to monitor her but also to read her messages, check her call logs, track her location in real time. His surveillance was intentional and methodical. Alessandra's suspicions were confirmed when Giovanni started mentioning private conversations she had never disclosed to him. He was aware of who she had communicated with and when. He challenged her with distorted interpretations of her online interactions, convinced she was being unfaithful despite having no evidence. His delusions intensified, and he demanded constant proof of her location, short videos every 10 minutes showing where she was and who she was with. When Alessandra refused to comply, he erupted in anger, threatening to end their relationship, accuse her of betrayal, or overwhelm her with messages until she complied. His demeanor became cold, controlling. Alessandra felt she was no longer an equal partner in the relationship. Instead, she felt watched, judged, and trapped. Giovanni's actions took a terrifying turn when he gained access to Alessandra's home surveillance system. He even sent a screenshot of her inside her apartment to her, revealing he had been watching her in what she thought was a safe space. By mid-2022, Giovanni's behavior became overtly predatory. He not only monitored her online but also started to follow her in person. He loitered around her apartment building in Bologna, appearing at strange hours without any notice. Neighbors began to take notice. One saw him attempting to enter the building, while another spotted him on the roof. He was no longer attempting to conceal his intentions. Her life became dominated by anxiety. Giovanni had become unpredictable and dangerous. The damage began to escalate. Someone tampered with her car, cutting its wiring and disabling the lights. In her apartment, the power was cut when someone removed the fuses. These incidents were more than just vandalism. They were deliberate attempts to force her to confront him. She heard shouting, loud bangs against her walls, and items being smashed in her home. At one point, he even climbed back onto the roof, trying to break in again. What had once seemed like affection had turned into obsession. All personal boundaries had been shattered. Alessandra, who once led a calm, structured life filled with routine, was now living in a constant state of fear. Alessandra was no longer in a relationship. She felt as though she was being hunted. She started carrying pepper spray. This small change marked a significant emotional shift for someone who once felt confident and graceful. Fear began to permeate her daily life. She confided in friends and family that returning home made her anxious. Sometimes, she sought comfort at her sister Stefania's house, but this relief was always temporary, and her dog had to stay in the apartment. Leaving her dog behind was not an option for Alessandra. This emotional connection forced her to return to a dangerous environment repeatedly. Between July and August, the situation grew more volatile. Alessandra shared her experiences of intimidation and increasing aggression with Stefania. Despite her fear, she was still searching for ways to calm the situation. She avoided direct confrontations, perhaps hoping that silence or a calm demeanor would lessen the obsession. However, Giovanni reacted to her distance by becoming even more aggressive, perceiving her withdrawal as a challenge that needed to be addressed. On July 29, 2022, Alessandra took an important step to protect herself by filing a police report. She documented Giovanni's obsessive behavior, his repeated invasions of her privacy, and his increasingly erratic presence near her home. To support her claims, she provided screenshots of messages, photos of him near her residence, and detailed accounts of the stalking that had troubled her for months. Despite this evidence, the police did not take urgent measures. Days went by, and her fear continued. On August 3rd, she returned to the police with more evidence, including additional sightings and further incidents of interference. Although she reiterated her concerns, the case was still considered in its early stages. Investigators acknowledged her claims, but no protective actions were recommended. There was no restraining order, no formal warning issued, and no police presence near her building. By August 8th, she went back to the police again because the harassment had not ceased. Giovanni still showed up near her home and tried to enter the building. She kept meticulous records of each incident, including car damage, power disruptions, and break-in attempts. His messages had also become more aggressive. Yet, the official response to her situation remained unchanged. A fourth visit took place on August 13th. By that time, Alessandra was both exhausted and terrified. She felt she was being watched, followed, and monitored online. Giovanni's control over her life invaded her personal communications and daily activities. She clearly expressed her fear for her life and provided the police with direct quotes from his messages, which contained threats and psychological manipulation. One of her statements was particularly chilling: "I don't want to die." It was not just a plea, it was a stark warning. However, this was insufficient to prompt urgent action from the authorities. They cited procedural limitations, saying that they needed more witness statements. The investigators minimized the threat because there had been no physical attack, treating the case as simple harassment rather than a potential for violence. They failed to recognize the serious situation unfolding before them. Her family would later contest this failure, asserting that the warnings had been clear, consistent, and serious. The progression of events was evident. What started as an obsession with digital activities escalated into physical intimidation. Giovanni's behavior shifted from being reactive to becoming calculated, repetitive, and dangerous. The most significant evidence emerged on August 20th, 2022, just 3 days before the incident. Giovanni made a checklist on his phone, which investigators later discovered in his Notes app. The list was precise, detailing items such as duct tape, a hammer, and restraints. Below the list was a written plan outlining steps to simulate a conversation, find a way to enter, and gather the necessary tools. The thoroughness of this plan eliminated any doubt about his intentions. This was not an act of impulsive anger, it was deliberate planning. On August 21st, Giovanni left Sicily, where he had been involved in football-related activities, and traveled to Senigallia under the pretense of personal business. He continued his journey, arrived in Bologna on August 22nd. Digital records later confirmed Giovanni's movements in unsettling detail. He entered Bologna quietly, without notifying anyone, including Alessandra. After arriving, he concealed a hammer in a bush near Alessandra's apartment building, placing it strategically in a hidden corner of the residential complex. He had thoroughly scouted the area beforehand, meticulously planning each step. That same day, he climbed to the rooftop of the building and watched Alessandra's movements from above. He had been watching her for months, but this time, he was ready to act. Weeks earlier, Giovanni had made a note on his phone, dated July 2nd, stating, "He will end her because she ended him emotionally." In the note, he portrayed himself as a victim, claiming he had been manipulated and abandoned, pushing him to his breaking point. He was fully aware of the consequences of his actions, writing, "He knows he will end up in prison. This note will explain to the police what she did to him." His intentions were clear. He had made this decision long before he traveled north. On the evening of August 23rd, Alessandra arrived home, unaware that Giovanni was waiting nearby. It was just after 9 p.m., and she was on the phone with her sister, Stefania, in a normal conversation built. As Alessandra approached the entrance of the building, Giovanni emerged from his hiding place. The attack happened in seconds. Stefania, still on the phone, noticed a sudden change. Alessandra's voice shifted, followed by the unmistakable sounds of a violent struggle. In that brief moment, everything fell apart. Witnesses later reported seeing Giovanni attack her. He grabbed a hammer and struck her with such force that the hammerhead broke off the handle. However, he didn't stop there. Giovanni continued to hit her with his fists and then picked up a heavy wrought iron bench from just outside the entrance, using it to beat her repeatedly. He displayed extreme violence, delivering multiple devastating blows. Forensic reports later indicated that she had suffered over 20 traumatic injuries. Alessandra had visible injuries on her skull, chest, arms, and legs, showing evidence of a brutal assault. Her body was found with signs of blunt force trauma, severe fractures, and indications that she had been dragged on the ground. Despite the loud noises and chaos, Giovanni made no attempt to flee. When the police arrived, he was calmly sitting by the front door of the building, waiting. Officers noted his eerie composure. There was no struggle or remorse, only a chilling acceptance of his actions. Alessandra was taken to the hospital, but unfortunately, it was too late. Her injuries were severe, and she died shortly after arriving. The evidence was indisputable. His actions were deliberate, and he made no attempt to hide what he had done. The precision in his timing and the weapon's location revealed clear premeditation. Witnesses described him as quick and confident, as if he had rehearsed the act numerous times in his mind. Stefania's phone call, along with both physical and digital evidence, was essential for piecing together the timeline of events. The entire attack lasted just a few minutes, but it followed months of carefully planned psychological abuse. After his arrest, Giovanni was moved to a psychiatric facility. Initially, he chose to remain silent but later made statements blaming Alessandra for what happened, claiming she caused him emotional pain and had broken him. Investigators, however, recognized this as an attempt to mislead. The crime was clearly planned, documented, and carried out with disturbing precision. Although his defense team requested a psychiatric evaluation, court-appointed experts determined that he was fully aware of his actions. He showed obsessive and controlling behavior but did not qualify for an insanity defense. His mental state was intact, and he acted with intent. During sentencing, Giovanni spoke briefly, describing his experience as a nightmare. He told the court that if they considered him sane, he deserved the maximum penalty. He attempted to portray himself as a broken man, but the court was unaffected by his claims. His attempt to blame his victim fell apart under the weight of the evidence. On February 12, 2024, Giovanni Padovani was found guilty of stalking and the premeditated murder of Alessandra Mattuzzi. He was sentenced to life in prison. The court highlighted several aggravating factors: the cruelty of the attack, his lack of remorse, and the extensive psychological abuse that occurred before the crime. The consequences extended beyond the courtroom. Following Alessandra's death, a surge of online hostility targeted her on social media. Mean comments overwhelmed news articles, with strangers criticizing her looks, clothing, and age, as well as the age difference between her and Giovanni. Some even implied that she had provoked his actions. One of the most alarming remarks came from Donatello Alberti, was then director of Croce Bianca of Ferrara, who suggested that her appearance justified Giovanni's jealousy. The backlash was swift, resulting in Alberti's immediate removal from his position. Alessandra's family responded by filing complaints against 5 individuals for their online harassment. In an unusual move, the Bologna prosecutor's office initiated an investigation into this cyber harassment. This case set a significant legal precedent in Italy, marking one of the first times digital defamation against a deceased victim was prosecuted on such a scale. In the view of both the court and the public, Giovanni's actions were not only murder but also the final result of a prolonged campaign of control, psychological, digital, and physical, a heartbreaking example of a system that failed to intervene in time. Experts later recognized his behavior as classic Othello syndrome, a psychological condition characterized by delusional jealousy. Unlike normal jealousy, this disorder involves persistent, irrational thoughts and doubts about a partner's fidelity, along with an inability to accept reality. In severe cases, it can lead to violence, as was the tragic outcome for Alessandra, who lost her life due to this condition. Alessandra Mattuzzi's life, defined by compassion and grace, was cruelly ended on August 23, 2022, by Giovanni Padovani's calculated violence, despite her desperate pleas for protection. While his life sentence on February 12, 2024, delivered justice, it could not erase the pain of her family, particularly her sister Stefania, nor the sting of a system that failed to act on her warnings. Alessandra's legacy as a devoted daughter, sister, and professional endures, her warmth forever etched in the hearts of those she loved. Her family's fight against post-murder cyber harassment, culminating in a groundbreaking Italian legal precedent, has sparked vital conversations about digital abuse and victim blaming. Though her loss remains a stark reminder of unchecked stalking and domestic violence, Alessandra's memory fuels a call for stronger protections to ensure no one else suffers her fate. The case of Michael Wayne Jones. Michael Wayne Jones was born on May 1, 1981, in Brattleboro, Vermont, USA. His parents' identities are unknown, but it's clear that his family life was marked by complexity and hardship. From a young age, Michael witnessed his parents' physical and mental abuse, and he was also a victim of this mistreatment. This tragic pattern of behavior seemed to be a lasting legacy affecting both sides of his family. When Michael was young, his father was sent to prison for unknown reasons. This event had a profound impact on Michael, leaving him feeling empty and lost. In an attempt to start anew, his mother remarried and had another son, Dana. Michael found some comfort in having a sibling, but their home life remained far from perfect. His stepfather's inability to hold down a job placed a heavy financial burden on his mother, who had to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, adding to their struggles. Michael's stepfather was aggressive and violent towards both him and Dana, using harsh punishment and sexual abuse to discipline them. If Michael was late to school or made a mistake, he would be severely punished, locked in a shed, or subjected to abuse. Michael's life was marked by harshness, yet he displayed a generous and protective nature. In the face of dire circumstances, he would often take on the role of safeguarding his brother Dana, even enduring punishments meant for him to spare him the pain. This courageous and loving behavior forged a strong bond between the brothers, earning Michael Dana's admiration. The stepfather's control was extremely strict, rarely allowing Michael to interact with children from school or the neighborhood. His mother, paralyzed by fear of her husband, was unable to confront or oppose him, creating an atmosphere of isolation, secrecy, and oppression within the household. As a result, Michael and Dana were left to endure the ongoing abuse alone, without any external support. The bleak atmosphere of their home did not escape the notice of their neighbors, who began to suspect that abuse was taking place. One day, driven by desperation, Michael made a break for it, but without a clear destination in mind, he was eventually tracked down by the authorities. When questioned about his reasons for leaving, he shared the difficult story of his family life, but unfortunately, he received no assistance regarding his situation. Michael put on a brave face to hide his true feelings from those around him. As he entered his teenage years, his low self-worth had a profound impact on him, causing depression that needed professional help. However, his high school provided a temporary escape from his suffering, where, although introverted and lonely, Michael felt relatively comfortable, as his responsibilities helped distract him from his unhappy home life. He was lucky to meet Dorothy, a business owner in the area, who introduced him to her daughter, a girl whose name remains a secret. Michael developed a close bond with the girl, which eventually turned into an on-again, off-again romance. This special connection brought out a kind, affectionate, and protective side of Michael that few people had seen. Dorothy was delighted by this new aspect of Michael's personality, but she was also concerned. Every time her daughter visited Michael, he would become anxious and uneasy when it was time for her to leave. Despite this, Michael went out of his way to keep her from visiting his home. Dorothy picked up on these signs and decided to have more in-depth conversations with Michael. Eventually, he confided in her about his constant fear for his mother's and brother's safety. This allowed Dorothy to glimpse the emotional weight he carried. Their friendship provided Michael with a temporary escape from his troubles, a space where he could express his emotions. After finishing high school, Michael made a life-altering decision by enlisting in the United States Navy. This marked the beginning of a new era, giving him a clear sense of purpose within a highly structured environment. As he developed a deep love and attachment for the Navy, Michael realized he had made the right choice. This sense of well-being was largely due to the new friendships he formed with his fellow servicemen. Although he occasionally drank, he always showed up to work and proved to be a calm and composed individual. Michael was previously in a romantic relationship with a fellow service member, but it was marred by physical abuse, which revived the traumatic memories of his dysfunctional family background. When his depression resurfaced, he made the difficult decision to end the relationship. Turning his focus to his career, he underwent additional training to provide medical care in combat zones, earning him a medical role assignment with the Marines. During this time, Michael met Sarah, a young woman with whom he fell deeply in love. They eventually got married, and after the wedding, Michael left the Marines to dedicate himself to his new role as a husband. Sarah played a vital role in Michael's life, helping him stay on track and overcome his personal demons. Together, they had 3 children, and Michael was committed to being a good father, striving to provide them with a stable and nurturing environment. Although Sarah often took the lead in decision-making, Michael was a supportive partner, consistently backing her choices. Around 2011, Sarah landed a job in Central Florida, specifically in Orange County, prompting the family to relocate there. At Mount Dora Animal Hospital, managed by Bo Delaporte, she found a new role. As weeks passed and Michael struggled to find employment, Sarah persuaded Bo to hire him, recognizing his relevant work experience. Michael quickly adapted to his new responsibilities and demonstrated remarkable dedication. His infectious joy was evident to everyone, as he thrived in his role caring for animals and attending to their owners. His positive attitude made him highly sought after, with pet owners preferring his services. His employers, particularly Bo, grew very fond of him, extending their professional relationship into a strong friendship and trust. Bo even began to delegate some management responsibilities of the animal hospital to him. Everything was going smoothly until 2014, when Bo hired a new veterinary technician named Casey, born on December 23, 1986, in Ann, Indiana. Casey was the second daughter of Nikki and David, and her siblings were Sarah and Brandy. From a young age, Casey was the heart of her home, radiating energy that lifted everyone's spirits beyond her family. As she grew, Casey showed great compassion for others, driven by a deep connection to her spirituality. No matter the challenges, her strength lay in her unwavering faith and personal values. During her high school years, Casey crossed paths with Richard. Initially, their attraction was strong, but as they dated, Richard started to notice some concerning behaviors in her. While Casey had a kind side, she also struggled with jealousy and possessiveness, which fueled an insecure and abusive streak, manifesting in hurtful words and actions. Despite this, Richard persevered, and with patience and composure, they eventually tied the knot after finishing their education. Over time, Casey's mother decided to relocate to Florida, and soon after, Sarah and Brandy followed suit. Given Casey's close-knit family ties, she and Richard also made the move to the same state in 2009. As they settled in, Casey took on occasional jobs as a transporter and occasionally worked as a dog groomer while apprenticing to become a veterinary technician. During this period, the couple welcomed their first child, Cameron, and their joy was palpable. Casey proved to be a devoted mother, prioritizing Cameron's well-being above all else. A few years later, their happiness was further amplified with the birth of their second child, Preston. The children flourished in a nurturing environment, filled with laughter and their parents' loving care. As Casey progressed in her veterinary technician career, she landed a job at the same animal clinic where Michael had become Bo's trusted right-hand man. From the start, Michael and Casey developed an exceptional rapport, but Bo and his wife suspected that their apparent friendship concealed a deeper attraction. Despite being inappropriate given the circumstances, Michael couldn't deny the attraction, even if it meant risking discovery by Sarah. The illicit attraction began to distract Michael at work, leading to a decline in his performance, although he remained eager to attend to Casey's needs and requests. She reciprocated his attention, and it wasn't long before they began an affair. Eventually, Michael and Casey each decided to divorce their spouses. Sarah gained custody of their 3 children and relocated to Jacksonville. Although Casey and Richard agreed to shared custody with a fixed schedule, Casey took on the responsibility of transporting Cameron and Preston, diligently fulfilling her parental duties. Meanwhile, Bo grew increasingly frustrated with Michael's declining performance at the clinic. Moreover, Michael made inappropriate advances towards other employees, which further strained his relationship with Bo. When Michael requested leave to visit his hometown, claiming his mother's death, Bo later discovered it was a ruse for a beach vacation. This betrayal led Bo to terminate Michael's employment immediately. In retaliation, Michael broke into the clinic, stealing money, computer equipment, and even a weapon. Bo identified Michael as the culprit and reported him to the police. With Casey's help, Michael fled to New Mexico, but was eventually caught and brought to justice. However, after a brief stint in prison, he was released. Despite his past transgressions, Casey's trust in Michael remained unwavering. They soon moved in together, and Michael took on the role of stepfather to Cameron and Preston, much to Bo's dismay. By 2017, around Halloween, Michael and Casey exchanged vows and moved into a cozy 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom trailer. Despite the modest space, the affordable rent made them grateful to have each other. That same year, they welcomed their first child, Morali, followed by Ayana the next year. As Michael worked as a construction laborer to support their growing family, Casey took pride in her role as a homemaker. She reveled in every stage of her children's development and sought ways to capture those fleeting moments, which led her to create a YouTube channel to share their family's milestones. On the surface, their life appeared picture perfect, with Michael exuding a sense of calm and Casey's laughter often filling the background of their videos. However, behind the facade, the couple frequently butted heads, and their arguments had become a persistent issue. Distrustful of Michael, Casey had developed a habit of checking his phone, and she grew increasingly suspicious whenever he worked long hours. On the night of July 10, 2019, a heated argument broke out between Michael and Casey while their children slept. The spark that ignited the confrontation was Casey's discovery of a supposed infidelity on Michael's phone. The verbal exchange rapidly escalated into physical violence. In a fit of rage, Casey seized a baseball bat and shoved Michael with it. Enraged, Michael wrestled the bat from her and, in a blind fury, struck her repeatedly, ultimately resulting in her death. Michael then placed Casey's lifeless body in a plastic bag and concealed it in a closet. He attempted to erase any evidence of the crime scene. The next morning, he took further steps to prevent the children from uncovering the truth. He loaded her remains into his car. In the following days, Michael continued to post updates on Casey's social media accounts, masquerading as her, in an attempt to avoid raising suspicions. On July 26th, Michael sent a text to Richard, requesting that he look after Preston and Cameron. He made a similar request to Casey's mother, asking her to care for Morali and Ayana. When Richard arrived to collect the boys, he found Casey's absence peculiar and expressed his concerns to Michael, who downplayed the situation, claiming she had left town for a few days. Casey's mother had a similar reaction when she came for the girls. That same day, Michael contacted Sarah, informing her that he was separating from Casey and needed to see his children. While she worked, he picked them up and took them to his home. During the drive, the children detected a foul odor in the car, reminiscent of rotting flesh. For the next 2 weeks, Michael continued to commute between his home and Sarah's residence to visit his children, all the while keeping Casey's lifeless body concealed in the car. As the days turned into an unsettling silence, Casey's mother grew increasingly uneasy, sensing that something was amiss. On August 10th, Richard returned Cameron and Preston to Michael, and this time, Casey's prolonged absence sent Michael's concern into overdrive. During their brief, tense conversation, Michael offered an apology for his role in their divorce and acknowledged the struggles Richard had faced during his time with Casey. As the new school year drew near, Michael knew the disappearance of the children, and Casey would raise suspicions among the elementary school staff. One night, he roused Cameron from bed and suffocated him, then hid his body in a suitcase. The following morning, he repeated the horrific act with Preston, this time concealing the body in a garbage bag. A few days later, the trailer park owner handed Michael an eviction notice, giving him 2 weeks to vacate. Amid this dire situation, Michael went to collect Morali and Ayanna. When Casey's mother saw him again, still without her daughter, she suffered a nervous breakdown. Her mind raced with a single haunting question. Where was her daughter? As Michael drove with the girls, he was suddenly consumed by guilt. He felt he had no choice but to surrender at a police station. However, after lingering outside for a while, he changed his mind and drove back home. Once there, he filled the bathtub with water and drowned Morali and Ayanna. After they had stopped breathing, he carefully placed their bodies in a plastic container. As Hurricane Orion approached in early September, Florida declared a state of emergency, prompting many to seek refuge in public shelters to escape the impending disaster. This chaotic situation provided Michael with an opportunity to flee with the 5 bodies. He loaded them into his truck and drove north, intending to stay with Sarah and his children despite the ongoing emergency in Florida. Sarah couldn't help but notice that Michael never called his wife or inquired about the children, which made her feel uneasy. Although she was aware of the marital issues, she chose not to pry. After the hurricane passed, Michael's neighbors reported a foul smell emanating from the trailer to the property owner. Assuming the Jones family had already vacated, the owner first peeped through the windows and then entered the trailer. Other than the furniture and personal belongings, everything seemed normal, but the stench was overwhelming. By this time, Casey's mother was frantic to find an explanation for her daughter's disappearance, and she suspected that Michael might be in trouble with the law again and was hiding with her. She theorized that Casey might be hiding for her own safety, but rather than waiting idly, she contacted the sheriff's office to request a welfare check. When the officers conducted the welfare check, they found the house eerily empty and seemingly recently cleaned. However, the presence of cleaning supplies near the door clashed with the overwhelming stench of decomposition. Despite this, the property owner arrived and asked the officers to leave the premises. Meanwhile, with the body still in his vehicle, Michael fled Sarah's house and drove across the state border into Georgia. There, near a secluded wooded area, he callously disposed of Cameron, Preston, Morali, and Ayanna. While driving on the highway and checking his GPS, Michael lost control of his vehicle and crashed. Miraculously, he emerged unscathed, but the vehicle was left in shambles. Police officers rushed to the scene, where they were immediately struck by the foul odor emanating from the truck. Upon opening the suitcase, they were met with a grisly discovery: Casey's lifeless body. There, on the roadside, and under the stunned gazes of the authorities, Michael confessed in graphic detail to his heinous crimes, including the location of the children. As a result, he was taken into custody. Casey's family was left reeling from the news, their world shattered by the brutal revelation. They were consumed by incredulity, wondering how a human being could inflict such unspeakable harm on innocent lives, especially defenseless children. For the first time in her life, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of hatred towards someone, as she later recounted. Yet, the notion that Casey might have witnessed her children's tragic demise caused her the most profound anguish. Based on the findings, armed with a search warrant, the agents returned to Casey's residence. Upon entering, they were struck by the pungent smell and a reddish stain on the carpet. As they prepared to collect evidence, the autopsies were being performed concurrently. The forensic report revealed that Cameron had sustained a fractured jaw, but no other visible signs of trauma were evident. Notably, a towel was found lodged in his mouth. Preston had a noose wrapped around his neck. Morali and Ayanna were discovered together in a small plastic bag, accompanied by a baby bottle labeled Ayanna and a pair of pink sandals. The autopsy concluded that both had died by drowning. In the case of Casey, the examination revealed crushing on the front of her skull and face, indicating a blow with a blunt object, but no other traumas were found on her body. Michael agreed to be interviewed by the officers, and throughout the process, he remained calm and precise in his responses, making no attempt to deceive the agents. In fact, Michael expressed gratitude to the officers for capturing him, stating that there was nothing more he could do, given the circumstances. With a calm demeanor, he then recounted the events chronologically, from the night of the fight with Casey to his subsequent arrest. When questioned about the motive behind his actions, Michael responded that everything had cumulatively built up in his life, to the point where it seemed like the only viable solution. Beyond the devastating emotional toll of this tragedy on all those affected, it was especially cruel and heart-wrenching for Sarah to come to terms with the fact that her own children had been exposed to and lived with a man like Michael. Understandably, after learning the horrific truth, Sarah struggled with mental health issues. Michael was charged with second-degree murder in connection with Casey's death, as well as 4 counts of premeditated first-degree murder for the deaths of the children. He pleaded guilty, thereby bypassing a trial and proceeding directly to the sentencing phase. In this phase, a 12-member jury was tasked with deciding between life imprisonment and the death penalty. As part of their defense strategy, Michael's legal team highlighted his troubled upbringing and mental health issues, citing various psychological disorders as mitigating circumstances. However, state prosecutors argued that the sheer brutality of the case justified the ultimate penalty. In January 2023, a jury unanimously recommended the death penalty, as dictated by state law. After a brief 99-minute hearing, the judge handed down Michael's sentence. He received life without parole for Casey's murder, in addition to the death penalty. Michael's lawyer promptly filed an appeal, but on Friday, April 28, 2023, the judge reaffirmed the original sentence. Prosecutors expressed satisfaction that justice had been served for the victims' families as Michael awaits execution. Michael remains incarcerated, awaiting his fate. On April 27, 2024, the quiet community of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, was shaken to its core by the devastating death of 30-year-old Micah Miller, a vibrant and ambitious woman who was found dead in Lumber River State Park, North Carolina. She had been married to a local pastor, John Paul Miller, for nearly 7 years. However, the picture-perfect facade of their relationship hid a much darker truth. What secrets lay hidden within Micah and John's marriage? How could a man of God allegedly commit such a profound betrayal of trust? Micah and John first crossed paths when she was just 14 or 15 years old, as she and her family began attending the Solid Rock Church in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. At that time, John was serving as the leader of the youth group in the same church. Despite the significant age gap, John was 28 years old when he first met Micah. The two developed a friendship. When Micah turned 18, it was John who officiated her marriage to one of his friends. Both Micah and her husband were involved in the church, with Micah having several responsibilities, including working with the media team while her husband was in charge of the sports ministry. After some time, Micah became John's secretary and babysitter for his growing family. John was already married and was the father of 5 children. One day, while Micah was babysitting for John's kids, his wife discovered her husband and the babysitter in a compromising position. It was clear that the two had developed feelings for each other. The fallout from this revelation was swift. Both Micah's and John's marriages ended in divorce in 2016. Just 2 years later, the 23-year-old Micah found herself thrust into a new role as the stepmother to John's 5 children, becoming the pastor's wife. In her position, Micah took on even greater responsibilities within the church, leading worship, overseeing the women's and youth ministries, even traveling abroad on mission trip. Her dedication to her faith and the congregation was evident, but the true nature of her relationship with John remained shrouded in darkness. As Micah's role within the Solid Rock Church grew, so did the allegations of abuse and manipulation that she endured at the hands of her husband. According to Micah's own sworn affidavit, she was subjected to a torrent of mistreatment, including emotional, spiritual, financial, and even physical abuse, throughout her marriage. Micah's family and friends would later come forward with harrowing details of the torment she faced, alleging that John had hacked into Micah's personal accounts, sending messages designed to discredit her. Despite the overwhelming control John exerted over Micah, she refused to be cowed. In January 2023, Micah made the courageous decision to separate from her husband, taking the first steps toward reclaiming her freedom. This decision, however, was not an easy one, as Micah knew all too well the risks she faced in defying John's will. Just months later, in October, Micah filed for divorce, determined to break free from the shackles of her abusive marriage. This bold move was undoubtedly a testament to Micah's strength and resilience, as she faced the daunting prospect of rebuilding her life in the wake of the trauma she had endured. Micah's choice to leave John came at a significant cost. She reached out to the police multiple times after feeling that someone was following her, which added to her anxiety during her attempt to end the marriage. Micah discovered her tires had been slashed and found a tracking device on her car, deepening her fears about John's obsessive need to control her. These events made Micah feel even more vulnerable as she faced the challenges of divorce, constantly anxious about the possible consequences of her decisions. In the months leading up to Micah's tragic death, a series of troubling incidents heightened the sense of danger and mistrust in her relationship with John. As Micah tried to free herself from the marriage and establish her independence, John resorted to increasingly desperate and threatening methods to keep her under his control. In February 2024, Micah's sense of freedom was drastically affected when John had her hospitalized against her will, claiming it was for her health. He alleged that she wasn't taking her medication properly, using this as a reason for her forced admission to a psychiatric facility. However, Micah's family and friends saw through John's deceit, believing he had exaggerated her mental health issues to gain more control over her. As the divorce proceedings progressed, Micah applied for spousal support, with a hearing set for June 5th. This action was a bold statement, indicating that she would not allow John to manipulate her finances indefinitely. However, tensions mounted between them in mid-March when Micah asked John for $2,000 for a trip. John refused her request, suspecting that she would not use the money for its intended purpose. He had ongoing control over their financial decisions. At the same time as this financial dispute, John used his power of attorney to have Micah hospitalized. While she was in the hospital, John took her purse, car keys, and retrieved her car from a parking lot. He claimed he did this because he was worried about what Micah might do upon her release. On the morning of April 27th, surveillance video showed Micah leaving her apartment in Myrtle Beach at 11:38 a.m. She then drove to Dick's pawn shop, where security cameras recorded her entering at 12:12 p.m. and purchasing a Sig Sauer handgun on her own. Micah's phone search history indicated that she had looked up directions to Lumber River State Park, a secluded area in North Carolina. Just before 3 p.m. that day, she made a frantic call to 911. During the call, Micah asked the dispatcher to locate her phone, stating that she was in a national park and was afraid for her life. Her last words to the operator revealed her tragic intentions. She was about to take her own life. This call has sparked intense debate and speculation. Some online conspiracy theorists claim they heard a man's voice in the background, implying that Micah might have been pressured or coerced into making the call. Others argued that the entire call was potentially fabricated, possibly created using AI technology as part of a complex plan involving John. Just over an hour and a half after Micah made her 911 call, Johnny Jacobs, a North Carolina fisherman, discovered a woman's scattered belongings. Jacobs' discovery helped lead law enforcement to Micah's body, which was found in a swampy, wooded area just off the Lumber River. Jacobs reported that afternoon, he heard someone crying in the woods, followed by gunshots. While searching for the source of the sounds, he found Micah's belongings but not her body. He later told media outlets that he saw 3 people in a boat near the scene at the time of the shooting. Jacobs said he asked the 3 boaters, "Did you hear any gunshots?" and they all responded affirmatively. However, the boaters denied hearing any crying. Jacobs eventually traced the source of the sounds to an opening in the river. 20 yards into the opening, he found Micah's fanny pack about 2 feet from the water's edge, along with her cell phone and glasses. According to Jacobs, the fanny pack contained Micah's driver's license, bank cards, keys, wallet, credit cards, and a small Bible. Micah had died from a single gunshot wound to the head. Her Honda Accord was located in the park's parking lot, where authorities found a Sig Sauer gun case, a box of ammunition, and a receipt for a firearm she had bought earlier that day. The North Carolina medical examiner ruled that her death was a result of taking her own life by gunshot. However, Micah's family strongly disagreed with this finding, noting the many bruises, scratches, and defensive wounds on her body. They believed that Micah may have been forced or pressured into taking her life rather than doing so willingly. John insists he had no role in Micah's death, claiming he was not present at the time she died. He states he was at a sporting event in Charleston, South Carolina, which is about 3 hours from where Micah's body was discovered. Several eyewitnesses have confirmed that he was at the event. His vehicle also was seen traveling on Highway 17 in Horry County at 2:22 p.m. on April 27th. The investigation into Micah's death faced challenges due to many inconsistencies and unanswered questions. For example, the presence of multiple shell casings at the scene raised suspicions that Micah could have been the victim of foul play instead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Additionally, Micah's family and friends believe her actions and behavior in the days before her death did not reflect someone contemplating end one's own life. She had a hair appointment scheduled for the following week and was planning to go to church with her family the Sunday. The investigation into Micah's death involved both the Robeson County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, who worked together to gather evidence and understand the circumstances of her death. However, public demand for justice grew stronger, as Micah's family and supporters did not believe the official claim that she committed end one's own life. A key focus of the investigation was the suspicion of John's possible involvement in her death. Allegations of abuse, manipulation, and financial misconduct in their marriage contributed to the belief that there was more to the story. As the investigation progressed, John's behavior and comments raised further doubts about his role in the tragedy. Reports described him as increasingly erratic, with actions and statements that seemed aimed at confusing, manipulating others. Just a day after Micah's body was found in the Lumber River, John made an alarming announcement to the Solid Rock Church congregation. Instead of addressing them with the seriousness the situation warranted, his tone was casual and disconcerting. He began by stating that there wouldn't be an altar call that day and asked everyone to stand for an announcement. John then instructed the congregation to leave the church quietly and not to talk about the announcement while still inside. In a strange turn of events, he urged them to keep attending church and fulfilling their responsibilities, mentioning that he would be taking a break for several days or weeks. He then shocked everyone by revealing that his wife had died, claiming it was self-inflicted and had happened in North Carolina. John's behavior during this announcement was troubling. He seemed to be fueled by adrenaline, requested the congregation to pray for him and his children. He also mentioned that Micah had been struggling mentally and needed medication. His comments were particularly alarming because Micah's body had only been discovered less than 24 hours earlier. The coroner had not yet determined the cause of death. Meanwhile, the Robeson County Police were still investigating the case as a suspicious death, yet John had already labeled it a suicide, attributing it to Micah's mental health issues, despite the significant evidence of abuse and manipulation that had existed in their marriage. John denied any wrongdoing, asserting that the allegations of abuse were untrue and that he never harmed Micah. However, Micah's family and friends saw through his claims and refused to believe him. After Micah's death, John's actions raised further alarm. He insisted on immediate cremation and would not allow her family to see her body unless they complied with his demands. Adding to the growing suspicion, John hired a lawyer and sent letters demanding an end to the accusations against him. These letters contained subtle threats, implying that he wanted to silence anyone who questioned his role in Micah's death. As more details about John's behavior came to light, the public's call for justice intensified. Micah's family, friends, the surrounding community demanded answers and urged authorities to take action against those responsible for her death. As the investigation into Micah's death progressed, the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office became involved, bringing their resources and expertise to the case. However, it was unclear which specific areas the federal authorities were investigating. Micah's family expressed significant concerns about the autopsy, particularly because there was no information regarding gunshot residue. They also questioned why the authorities had not conducted these tests. Additionally, the family was worried about the toxicology report, raising the issue of whether Micah was mentally sound at the time of her death or if she was under the influence of substances. There was no documentation to clarify this. The family's concerns grew when Micah's body was cremated shortly after her death, a decision made by John, which prevented the possibility of a second independent autopsy. This action only increased suspicions that John might be hiding something. As the investigation continued, various theories arose regarding John's possible role in Micah's death. Some suggested that he may have used his boat to transport Micah's body to the remote location where it was discovered. Security footage from the pawn shop where Micah bought the gun also faced scrutiny, with some believing that the timestamps were altered to support a specific narrative. Additionally, the fact that John had been reported to the police for transferring church funds into his personal account raised further suspicions about his motives and integrity. One of the most troubling findings from the investigation was the discovery of Micah's detailed diaries, which she had written to document the abuse she experienced from John. John had contacted Micah's family, trying to obtain these documents, which increased suspicions that they contained evidence against him. Micah's family stated that these diaries now belonged to Micah's sister, Sierra Francis, who was appointed as the special administrator of Micah's estate. The diaries are considered crucial evidence in the ongoing investigation, as they are expected to clarify the true nature of John and Micah's relationship and the circumstances leading to her tragic death. Micah's family and friends strongly believe that John's abusive behavior, manipulation contributed to her decision to take her own life. They highlighted the numerous police reports she filed, which detailed her fears for her safety and the harassment she suffered at John's hands. Additionally, allegations of multiple affairs and financial misconduct further reinforced the perception that John was a man driven by his own desires and willing to go to great lengths to maintain control over others. The tragic death of Micah Miller sent shockwaves through the community, led to various reactions and consequences. Following this, Solid Rock Church, where John was a pastor, became a focal point of the controversy. Church leaders reported receiving numerous harassing phone calls and messages from people seeking answers and demanding accountability. The situation was equally troubling for those directly involved in the investigation. The coroner who examined Micah's body received threats. Micah's family, particularly her sister Sierra, firmly rejected the official explanation of her death. They believed that Micah's death was planned and staged by John, and they were resolved to find the truth, no matter the challenges. Their unwavering dedication to seeking justice for Micah demonstrated their love and commitment, alongside their strong belief that the authorities had not thoroughly investigated the circumstances of her death. Meanwhile, Jacobs has become one of the most controversial figures in the Micah Miller case. On March 14, 2025, at the intersection of Iona Church Road and Raynham Road, a rural intersection 2 miles from his home, Jacobs, a key witness in the case, died in a collision between 2 vehicles. Death of key witness fuels belief in conspiracy theories. As more information about the case became available, the public's demand for action against John intensified. Micah's supporters, both in the community and on social media, called for authorities to hold John responsible for his alleged involvement in her death. Micah's family's relentless pursuit of justice and the continuous calls for accountability all highlight the deep, lasting effects of this tragedy on everyone involved. In abusive relationships, one person frequently displays cruelty, aggression, and disrespect towards the other, whether they are a partner, spouse, family member, or coworker. Those who show these harmful behaviors are often labeled as hot-headed or incapable of managing their emotions. However, the more insidious type of abuse is the one that remains hidden, leading others to believe the family is perfect until a tragedy strikes. The relationship between Olsa Sabishnikova and Timur Prokhorov was viewed by many as a shining example of love, understanding, and support. They both grew up in the small rural community and met during their school years. After several years of dating, they appeared to be meant for each other. They had an extravagant wedding, with relatives traveling from far and wide to celebrate. However, just 3 days after their wedding, the newlyweds were laid to rest in the same grave at the local cemetery. What happened? Let's unravel this complex case. Olsa Sabishnikova, later known as Prokhorova, was born on 2001 in Maliks, a village of Tatarstan. She was the youngest of two children, with her older brother Rusin always looking out for her. When Alsu and Rusin were still in school, their parents divorced. They lived with their mother. Shortly after, their mother remarried, and the family moved to her new husband's home. Alsu and Rusin accepted their mother's new life, quickly bonded with their stepfather, who treated them like his own children. They began calling him Dad. At the new house, Alsu and Rusin adjusted quickly, enrolled in the local school, and made many friends. Life in the village was calm and peaceful, unlike the busyness of larger cities. The community consisted mainly of Russians, Tatars, and Uzbeks. The local community center hosted weekly dances, offered classes in performing arts, dancing, and choral singing. Concerts showcasing local talent were common during holidays. Alsu was an outstanding student, consistently earning straight A's. Her teachers praised her intelligence, responsibility, seriousness, and determination. She was reliable and known for her calm demeanor, often acting as a diplomat to peacefully resolve conflicts. Additionally, her beauty and kindness attracted many friends who wanted to be close to her. Her closest friend throughout childhood was her cousin, Sabrina Sabashnikova, who was 3 years younger. Despite the age difference, they felt like sisters, constantly in touch and sharing their deepest secrets. Sadly, both would face a tragic fate. From a young age, Alsu faced significant health issues. She suffered from a severe viral infection that damaged her kidneys, leading to chronic kidney failure that worsened over time. Alsu had to regularly visit a specialized clinic for treatment and supportive care, including numerous hemodialysis sessions, as her kidneys could no longer function properly. The financial burden of her ongoing medical care was heavy for the Savashnikova family, who were not wealthy. During difficult periods of her illness, Alsu had to switch to homeschooling, which often caused her to miss several months of school. Consequently, she struggled to prepare adequately for her graduation and entrance exams for higher education. Despite facing many challenges, Alsu aspired to further her education and hoped to attend the Neborazny Chelny branch of Kazan Innovative University to study economics. However, she recognized that her health issues would make it difficult to manage university life. Additionally, most of her family's budget was spent on her treatments and medications, making it hard for her to pay for tuition. Her mother encouraged her to consider starting at a vocational college to learn a skill that would provide a stable income, allowing her to defer university for a time. Alsu focused on staying positive and was determined to find a career she loved, aiming to become independent and not a burden on her family. She remained hopeful about the future and actively sought her path. She completed courses in eyelash extension and nail care, beginning to take clients at home, which suited her health needs. While in school, Alsu met Timur Prokhorov, an older student who was 4 years her senior. They quickly formed a strong friendship that eventually developed into a romantic relationship. Timur Prokhorov was born in 1997 in Neborazny Chelny as the younger of 2 sons in a relatively affluent family. His parents owned a small but successful business, which provided a comfortable income and allowed them to prioritize their children's education. Timur has an older brother, Artur, with whom he shares a close bond. Artur earned a law degree and currently works for the Ministry of Internal Affairs. In the late 2000s, the Prokhorov family bought land in the village of Maliks and began constructing their home. A few years later, they moved to the area with their children and settled in. Timur and his brother assisted their parents with building, finishing the house, as well as with household chores. According to friends, teachers, and community members, Timur was known for his kindness and level-headedness. He avoided conflict, preferred peaceful resolution through negotiation. He was willing to admit his mistakes, would apologize when necessary. In school, Timur was a good but not exceptional student. He participated in local arts, danced in a group, and performed at the community center, continuing these activities into adulthood. Timur's older brother got married while he was in university and moved back to Neborazny Chelny. Soon after, they had 2 children and frequently visited their relatives in Maliks. The nieces and nephews adored their uncle and treasured their time together. Timur felt the same way, often pampering them, enjoying their company. After completing school, Timur joined the military service in the Navy. At that time, he was dating Alsu, who was eagerly waiting for his return. Unfortunately, Timur's mother was diagnosed with a severe form of cancer. Despite all attempts to treat her, she soon declined and passed away within a few months. A year later, Timur's father remarried, and his new wife was embraced by the family. The adult children formed a strong bond with her, accepting her as one of their own. About 6 months later, Timur's father and stepmother returned to Neighboresny Chelny to focus on their business. They gave their nearly completed house in the village to their younger son, who continued to work on it himself. When Alsu and Timur met in high school, their feelings for each other grew quickly. Alsu was honest about her serious health problems, but this didn't discourage Timur. He assured her they would face the challenges together. After completing his military service, Timur resumed his studies and later joined his family's business. He earned enough to support both himself and Alsu, but Alsu didn't want to rely on anyone, so she continued to work hard from home. Unfortunately, due to her health condition, she had to stop doing nail extensions because she could no longer work with most materials. Timur was very caring towards Alsu. He drove her to Neighboresny Chelny and Kazan for her medical checkups, treatments, and therapies. He looked after her with great affection and concern. He got along well with Alsu's mother, who considered him like her own son. In 2018, Alsu's health began to decline rapidly. Her kidneys were failing. She needed regular dialysis to survive. The only hope for her was a kidney transplant. Fortunately, her mother was a perfect match and could be her donor, but the surgery and post-operative care were too expensive for the family to afford. Alsu found herself in a desperate situation, facing the possibility of death. Due to severe swelling, her face became almost unrecognizable, causing her great distress about her appearance. She didn't want Timur to see her in that state, even tried to prevent him from visiting her in the hospital. However, Timur was determined to stay by her side. The news of Alsu's critical condition and the urgent need for costly surgery quickly spread throughout the town. Concerned neighbors rallied to help in any way they could. They organized a charity concert at the local community center, with all proceeds going to support Alsu's family. Timur even performed that night with a dance group. Thanks to the community's efforts, they raised enough money in a short time to cover the life-saving surgery. Alsu and her mother traveled to a renowned clinic in Moscow, where a skilled surgeon agreed to take on her challenging case. The surgery was successful, and both women handled it well, but also faced a lengthy recovery process. She needed to take medications regularly, adhere to a strict diet, and attend frequent checkups to monitor the function of her transplanted kidney. Alsu spent almost 6 months in the hospital, followed by another year at home to minimize the risk of infection, as even a simple cold could have been life-threatening in her vulnerable condition. Despite the physical and emotional challenges, she diligently followed the doctor's recommendations. Her mother, stepfather, and brother provided constant support, encouraging her to remain positive, believe that things would improve. They were also very concerned about her relationship with Timur. Not every young man can handle a partner's health issues. If Timur had chosen to leave, no one would have criticized him, but he was determined to stay by Alsu's side. During Alsu's illness, Timur was constantly at the hospital, staying by her side and later at her parents' home. He was always willing to assist, taking her to medical appointments, even traveling to another city to find necessary medication. Soon after Alsu was discharged from the clinic, Timur proposed to her, and she joyfully accepted. In August 2021, Alsu and Timur had their nikah ceremony, an important religious event in Islam that symbolizes their union, similar to a Christian wedding. Following this, they moved into the groom's house, which was still under construction. While Alsu worked from home, Timur commuted daily to his job in Neighboresny Chelny. They were saving money for a grand wedding, which they planned to have in January. Alsu turned 21 on January 4, 2022, and they celebrated their wedding at her parents' house on January 20th. Family and friends from all over the Republic gathered to celebrate. Everyone wished the newlyweds a long and happy life together. The festivities lasted for 3 days. Guests noted how joyful and radiant Timur and Alsu appeared. Timur expressed his wish to call Alsu's mother, Mom. Alsu's mother, moved to tears, thanked God and fate for bringing such a wonderful husband to her daughter and a son-in-law into her life. Alsu's bridesmaid was Sabrina, an 18-year-old. She had to return for school on January 23rd. Sabrina stayed in a private room at Timur's home. Other guests were hosted at Alsu's parents' house and at the homes of nearby relatives since there were no hotels in the village or the surrounding areas. On the morning of January 23rd, Alsu's mother had a distressing dream in which she was unable to find her daughter. In the dream, her son-in-law quietly placed small coins into her hands. She woke up around 5 a.m. feeling very anxious and was unable to go back to sleep. Although she wanted to call her daughter, Alsu, she decided to wait since it was still early. By 7 a.m., she couldn't wait any longer and called her daughter, but no one answered. She also tried reaching Sabrina and Timur, but they didn't pick up either. Concerned, she and her husband chose to go to Prokhorov's house. When they arrived around 7:30 a.m., they noticed Timur's car was missing from the driveway. Initially, this didn't raise alarms, but when Alsu's mother tried the door and found it unlocked, panic began to set in. It seemed impossible for her daughter, son-in-law, and sister to leave the house without locking it. She entered her home, calling out for her daughter and son-in-law, but received no answer. As she stepped into the living room, she was overwhelmed by a horrifying sight. The lifeless bodies of Alsu and Sabrina lay on the floor, surrounded by pools of blood. Both women had been stabbed multiple times with a sharp object. It was evident they had died several hours prior, as their bodies were cold and stiff. In shock, she screamed, rushed outside to alert her husband. He quickly called the police and emergency services. Authorities arrived at 7:50 a.m. Meanwhile, Alsu's mother began experiencing heart problems, needed medical help. Distraught and unable to think clearly, she cried and screamed, struggling to accept that her daughter was gone. By this time, relatives of the young couple had arrived at the house. Neighbors were gathering due to the noise. Forensic experts discovered more than a dozen stab wounds on the bodies of Alsu and Sabrina, which were caused by a knife and scissors. However, the actual murder weapons were not found in the house. The primary suspect became Timur. As he was missing, his phone was unreachable. His relatives quickly came to his defense, claiming he could not have committed such a crime. All witnesses, including family and nearby residents, consistently described Timur as a loving and devoted husband who treated his wife with utmost care. According to them, Timur and Alsu rarely had arguments. If they did disagree, Timur would never resort to violence against someone he loved so deeply. However, some neighbors later asserted that Timur was a concealed abuser. They claimed he was extremely jealous of his attractive wife and that their private arguments were sometimes audible to others. Alsu had felt guilty about her illness, and Timur allegedly told her that no one else would take care of her except him. The night before the tragedy, Timur and his friends were at his house, enjoying drinks and staying up late on a Saturday. When it was time to say goodbye to his guests, it was already past midnight. Timur then was missing for nearly an hour and a half. During this time, Alsu sent a text to her friend, expressing her concern because she couldn't reach Timur, who had left his phone behind. At 2 a.m., Alsu messaged her friend again, saying that Timur had returned safely, everything was all right, and they were going to bed. She thanked her friend for her worry and included a smiley face. Those messages didn't raise any alarms, everything seemed normal. Investigators later speculated that Timur might have become jealous of someone Alsu was in contact with, leading to a heated argument when he returned. Having been drinking that evening, it's believed he may have lost control and grabbed a knife. Realizing the gravity of his actions, he likely fled in his car, prompting authorities to track him down to uncover the details of the incident. On January 23rd, reports surfaced about a car found in a parking lot near a small roadside cafe along the road to Yelabuga. Inside the vehicle was the body of a young man who had died from a gunshot wound to the chin. A rifle was found in his hands, suggesting he had taken his own life. The deceased was quickly identified as 25-year-old Timur Prokhorov, who had been wanted for questioning in connection with a double murder. Later, it was discovered that the rifle belonged to Timur's father and was stored in a secure safe at the home where Timur lived with his wife. It seems Timur took the weapon with him when he left that night, possibly already planning to end his own life. Authorities obtained footage from a security camera located on a building across from the Prokhorov residence. The video showed Timur leaving the house with friends. About an hour and a half later, he returned alone but disappeared from the camera's view afterward. It's important to mention that the camera was aimed at the street, so Timur might have left in the opposite direction, out of sight. A witness remembered that on the night of January 23rd, a local club nearby was holding a dance event. However, Timur and Alsa did not attend because they had guests. At one point, an unfamiliar car arrived at their house but then drove away shortly after. The next morning, after news of the tragedy broke, two young men came searching for Timur. When they found out what had happened, they quickly left, and no one could provide any details about them later. During the investigation, a 64-year-old massage therapist became a person of interest. It was later discovered that she also offered intimate services in her home. While her name was kept out of the media, it was alleged that Timur had visited her multiple times. On the night of the tragedy, Timur sent her a text asking if he could come over for a session. She wasn't surprised by his late-night request, said she would be waiting for him. Some reports suggest that Timur met with the massage therapist after he had already harmed his wife and Sabrina. They had an intimate encounter, but when she asked for payment, Timur refused. She threatened to report him, but instead of apologizing, he became angry, insulted her, and assaulted her several times before leaving. The woman later reported a physical assault to the police, claiming that Timur also assaulted her. However, she eventually retracted her statement for reasons that are not clear. There were rumors suggesting that Timur's well-connected relatives, including some in law enforcement, intervened to resolve the situation. It is said they kept the massage therapist's identity secret, and she never talked about her relationship with Timur or the abuse she endured. Speculation arose that Timur had seen the massage therapist before the incident, which might explain his prolonged absence that night. After he returned home, a jealousy-fueled argument may have occurred between him and his wife. This conflict could have escalated, leading Timur to grab a knife and attack both women. At 7:03 a.m. on January 23rd, Timur logged into his social media account for the last time. After that, he stopped answering calls and messages, marking this time as the approximate moment of his death. The theories of infidelity, jealousy, and sudden rage did not match Timur's character as described by those who knew him. Even Alsu's family dismissed these ideas, insisting that the crime was committed by someone outside. Timur was seen by friends as kind, calm, thoughtful, and balanced, making his violent actions surprising. Although he might have had a drink on his days off or during holidays, no one ever saw him drunk. However, during a search of his home, investigators discovered a large quantity of prescription painkillers that had been prescribed to Timur's mother, who had cancer. After her passing, many strong medications remained in the house, which appeared to have been used periodically, as they were not thrown away and were organized in a separate drawer. This new information suggests another theory: Timur might have secretly used these medications. On that night, he could have taken a large dose combined with strong alcohol, which may have caused hallucinations or intense anger. If this happened, the crimes could have been committed while he was not fully himself. Once he regained his senses and understood the gravity of his actions, he might have felt that ending his own life was his only option. No criminal case was opened regarding the death of the individual believed to have committed the crime. However, the relatives of Timur and also struggled to accept that Timur was responsible for such a violent act. At the request of Alsu's mother, the young couple was buried together in the same grave at the local cemetery. She insisted that her son-in-law would never have harmed her daughter, as he loved her deeply, believed they should remain together even in death. News of this tragic double death spread rapidly through the quiet village, causing a wave of shock throughout the entire Republic of Tatarstan. Journalists from across the region flocked to report on the sensational story, but the Prokhorov and Sabashnikova families chose not to speak to the media. In contrast, many villagers, most of whom did not even know the couple, were eager to give interviews, often sharing strange rumors and gossip. Consequently, the case became muddled with inaccurate information, much of which was far from the truth. On January 26th, Timur's father gave an interview in which he stated that the autopsy had revealed signs of physical abuse on his son's body and noted that there was very little blood found in the car. This led him to believe that Timur might have been beaten and shot elsewhere before his body was placed in the car. However, the next day, investigators publicly contradicted the father's claims, confirming that the only injury on Timur's body was the gunshot wound. This wound was located under the chin and at a specific angle, suggesting that Timur likely died by ending one's own life. The tragic deaths of Alsu Prokhorova, Sabrina Savishnikova, and Timur Prokhorov shattered the illusion of a perfect love story that had captivated their communities. What began as a joyous celebration of Alsu and Timur's wedding ended in unimaginable violence, exposing the underlying complexities of their relationship. The loss of 3 young lives left families and neighbors grappling with grief, disbelief, and unanswered questions about the motives behind Timur's actions. As the Republic of Tatarstan mourned, the case highlighted the brutal reality of hidden abuse, reminding us that even the most idyllic appearances can mask deep pain. The scars of this tragedy remain, prompting greater awareness and compassion to prevent such heartbreak in the future. The case of Athena Strand. Athena Strand was born on May 25, 2015 in the small town of Duncan, Oklahoma, USA. Her parents divorced and her father moved to Texas while Athena still lived with her mother in Oklahoma. Despite living far apart, her father kept in touch and visited her whenever possible. Sometimes her mother would bring Athena to see her father so they could spend time together. Both her parents remarried later and Athena had 2 younger sisters. Athena was a cheerful, sociable child. She loved to play and spend a lot of time outdoors. In the winter of 2022, when Athena was 7 years old, she temporarily left Oklahoma to live with her father in Texas until the New Year holidays ended. During this time, Athena attended a local elementary school. Her father's house was located in a remote rural area, surrounded by forests and vast fields. Here, Athena had a great time exploring nature with her father and also built a good relationship with his new wife, Elizabeth. On November 30th, Athena returned home from school at around 4:15 p.m., just like every other day. She was home alone with her mother, Elizabeth, because her father and grandfather had gone hunting. That evening, Athena had an argument with Elizabeth. Athena finally felt upset and decided to go to her own room. Meanwhile, Elizabeth went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. After about 20 minutes, Elizabeth went to Athena's room to call her to dinner, but she was gone. She started searching the whole house, but couldn't find Athena anywhere. Elizabeth called a relative of her husband who lived nearby. Although Athena often visited the relatives, this time the relatives said that she was missing. Next, Elizabeth called her husband and told him about the situation. Her husband immediately asked her to contact the police and return home immediately. When she got home, Elizabeth called the 911 emergency number at around 6:40. Only 14 minutes later, the police arrived at her house. She explained the situation to the police and said that she thought Athena might have left home because of an argument between mother and child. Initially, the police seemed suspicious of Elizabeth because she had reported the child missing 40 minutes after discovering the incident. However, after listening to her description of the search around the house and contacting family members, they concluded that she might be telling the truth. The police immediately began searching the surrounding area. Although it was already dark, they still organized a search force within a radius of several kilometers around the house. They believed that the child might have gotten lost in the dark and needed urgent help. They focused on searching the entire area, including the woods and fields. Police also considered the possibility of kidnapping but found no evidence to support this theory. There was no sign of an intruder in the house and no strange noises or screams that night. Police received support from family and town residents in their efforts to find the missing Athena. The girl's mother quickly arrived at the scene after learning of her daughter's disappearance. But the results were still inconclusive as no trace of Athena was found. The search became more difficult, as the area around the house was quite difficult to access, especially at night. Therefore, the police continued the search at 7 a.m. the next morning with more police officers joining in. As news of the disappearance spread, hundreds of volunteers volunteered to join the search effort. Some came on horses and ATVs, while police used drones and helicopters equipped with thermal cameras to search for Athena. By the end of the day, Athena had still not been found. Police were concerned for her safety because of the cold weather at the beginning of winter. Although Texas is a small southern state, the temperature had dropped to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Since the girl was wearing thin clothes, it would be really difficult to endure such weather. On the third day, the search continued, and the police expanded the area to search for Athena. The police became increasingly suspicious that Athena had left the house on her own. During these days, they searched for miles in all directions, but they could not find the girl. The police identified the people who were near Athena's house that night. However, Athena's house was located in a special location, far from the main road, and there were no surveillance cameras in the area. However, they quickly got some important clues. A courier service had delivered to Athena's house that evening. The police contacted the courier company and learned that the delivery to the address was entrusted to an outside contractor. They then contacted that contractor and determined that the truck had arrived at Athena's house. Each of these trucks was equipped with surveillance cameras. So the police asked for footage from November 30th. After rewinding the time the truck arrived at the house, the police saw the driver dragging a girl who looked like Athena into the car. The police quickly identified the driver as Tanner Hearer, 31, and the police went to his address. Shortly thereafter, the man was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and taken in for questioning. As soon as the police mentioned the video evidence, Tanner began to speak. He explained that he had actually delivered a package to Athena's house that evening. While backing up the truck, he heard a crash and went to check what had happened. There, he saw the girl lying on the ground and realized that he had accidentally hit her with his car. As he approached, Tanner noticed that the girl was not seriously injured. She was conscious and spoke to him calmly. The girl said her name was Athena. He started to feel scared. He decided to take her into the truck and try to figure out how to solve the problem. The girl continued to talk to him and said that she would tell her father about this, and Tanner became more and more worried. He didn't know what to do with the situation, because he knew that if she told an adult about the incident, he could get into legal trouble. According to Tanner, he could not think of a better way than to kill her. He thought the best way would be to break her neck, but he could not do it. He then strangled Athena to death with his hands. He hid Athena's body in a nearby river. Tanner gave the police the exact location where he left Athena. So the police went there and found Athena's body. The murder shocked not only her family but also thousands of people across the country. All major media outlets reported the case and many were horrified by the brutality. After the body was found, Tanner was charged with kidnapping and murder. While waiting for the medical examiner's report, the police scrutinized Tanner's identity, trying to better understand his motives. Tanner's account of the events did not seem plausible. According to Tanner, he lightly hit the girl with his heart valve, causing no serious injuries to her. However, Tanner was so depressed that he immediately decided to kill her, thinking that beating a child would cost him his job. Tanner's story seems very strange. Police found out that this man was engaged and had a 1-year-old child. In addition to delivering goods, he occasionally worked as an Uber driver. Tanner's daily life, he participated in performing in a band at several cafes in the nearby city of Fort Worth. On social media, he often posted photos with his son, snapshots during music performances, and other moments of his daily life. These images do not show that he was a cruel person. There is no information about his previous criminal record before his arrest. Police also found no indication that he might be a dangerous criminal. Meanwhile, Athena's parents filed a lawsuit against FedEx and the contracting company, accusing them of allowing Tanner to work. They called for higher standards for employee screening to prevent such crimes in the future. Police investigators said the package Tanner delivered that evening was a Christmas gift Athena's parents had ordered for her. It was a Barbie doll she had long wanted. However, when the results of the medical examination were released, the case became more complicated. Experts said Athena died within an hour of being kidnapped. Her body had suffered various degrees of injury, and the primary cause of her death was asphyxiation. Police then outlined a series of events that could have led to the incident. After an argument with her mother, Athena decided to go outside and stand in the yard. At this time, Tanner arrived to make a delivery and found her alone. According to this theory, he saw an opportunity to satisfy his lust. The area around Athena's house was quite isolated, and the police believe that Tanner may have tricked or deliberately attacked Athena to get her into the car without encountering any resistance. It is still unclear what happened next. There are two main possibilities that seem most plausible. First, Tanner may have planned to take Athena out of the house to carry out his evil intentions, but the girl started screaming or tried to escape. Fearing discovery, Tanner killed the girl and dumped her body in the river. Second, Tanner may have committed some kind of harassment against Athena that did not involve direct contact. In this case, medical experts would not find evidence of sexual assault. To learn more, police spent weeks digging into Tanner's past. They spoke to his relatives, friends, and acquaintances, looking for any signs that he might have been involved in other criminal activities. There was a major breakthrough in the investigation. The police found several people who said they had been assaulted by Tanner when they were children. However, the identities of these people have not been released to protect the investigation. One of Tanner's victims went public with her story of being assaulted by him when she was 16. She shared her story on social media in an attempt to gain attention. Surprisingly, Tanner faced no consequences for his actions and was not even considered a suspect for a long time. Sadly, the victim wrote that no one believed her during those years. However, after Tanner killed Athena, these allegations received more attention, exposing Tanner's true nature. Now Tanner will also face separate trials for 4 sexual assaults involving minors. In preparation for the trial, the government announced that they would seek the death penalty. Tanner himself has hired a lawyer to advise him to withdraw his confession and declare his innocence, but this is unlikely to help him avoid punishment, as the police have video footage from the truck as well as Tanner's testimony about the exact location of the body. We can only watch the trial unfold and wait for more details to become public. The case of Nicole Peets. Nicole Peets was born on February 26, 1973, in King County, Washington. Her parents, who later divorced while Nicole was still in school, had her as their only child together. During her high school years, Nicole was a lively and sociable individual who participated in sports and had a charming personality. She had many friends and enjoyed trips to the countryside, with Lake Sammamish, located east of Seattle, being her favorite vacation spot. She spent her summer vacations there every year. After high school, Nicole attended Western Washington College, where she studied public relations. Alongside her studies, she continued to engage in sports and maintained an excellent physical shape. She decided to turn her passion for sports into a career and landed a job as a trainer at a local sports club. There, she quickly earned the respect of her colleagues and gained a loyal client base who regularly attended her group classes. At the same time, Nicole pursued higher education in management and eventually secured a job at a major mobile communications company. Outwardly, Nicole appeared to be a friendly and sociable person who was always willing to help others. However, few people realized that she was hiding a great deal of pain and misery behind this facade. As a teenager, Nicole struggled with addiction after her parents got divorced. This event was traumatic for her fragile and still developing psyche, leading her to rebel and seek solace in bad company and alcohol. Unfortunately, this led to a severe addiction that lasted for several years and had a devastating impact on Nicole's physical and mental health. Her mother, Gail, was often away from home due to her demanding job as a flight attendant and didn't notice the warning signs. Nicole lived with her elderly grandmother, who also didn't initially realize that her granddaughter was regularly consuming alcohol. By the time the truth came to light, the damage had already been done. Fortunately, Nicole's mother was there to support her. Gail not only arranged for Nicole to receive therapy but also attended AA meetings with her, helping her to open up and overcome her addiction. By that time, Gail had remarried, and her new partner, Rod, was very supportive of Nicole. He treated her like his own daughter and believed she could overcome her addiction. Nicole took therapy seriously, attending every session, and soon overcame her addiction. However, the effects of alcohol on her health were significant. Nicole developed severe pancreas problems, requiring surgery. More devastatingly, her early alcohol abuse damaged her reproductive system, rendering her unable to have children. After overcoming her addiction in the mid-1990s, Nicole met her future husband, David, at her new job at a sports club. David, a regular at the club, was a tall, handsome young man who was diligent about his fitness routine. He was immediately drawn to Nicole, and she, too, noticed the attractive young man and became interested. Although David was 4 years younger than Nicole, the age difference did not bother them. The relationship between Nicole and David gradually developed into a romantic one, which lasted almost 8 years before they got married in 2002. Their intimate wedding ceremony in Hawaii was attended only by their closest friends and family. After exchanging their vows, they moved to a quiet town called Linwood in Washington State, where they bought a home and began their new life together. Nicole was known for being sociable, friendly, and had a talent for building relationships. She quickly formed close bonds with the neighbors and had a passion for animals, with multiple dogs being part of the family. Because unable to have children of her own, she directed her maternal instincts towards her pets. David and Nicole were viewed as the epitome of a happy married couple, with a seemingly perfect relationship that brought them joy. One of Nicole's many hobbies was cooking, and she excelled at it. She delighted her husband and impressed guests with her culinary skills, taking pleasure in sharing meals and company with those she loved. Tragedy struck when Nicole disappeared on the eve of her 33rd birthday in 2006. Nicole failed to report to work and was unreachable by her family throughout the day. Her mother, Gail, tried to contact her but was unsuccessful, prompting her to alert David, Nicole's husband, to see if he knew what was going on. However, David had also been unable to reach Nicole. When questioned, David revealed that he and Nicole had argued the previous day, and when she didn't answer her phone the next day, he assumed she was still upset. He waited until evening to attempt to apologize, only to realize Nicole was still missing. It wasn't until the evening of the second day, when Nicole still hadn't contacted her family and her phone was still unreachable, that the police decided to launch a search. They began by investigating the last known location where Nicole was seen, her home with David. An investigation of the room where Nicole Peets was last seen found no signs of evidence of kidnapping. The absence of her personal car suggested that she might have simply left on her own. The family turned to social media to spread the word and ask for help in finding their daughter. They also immediately flew to Linwood, where they started their own search efforts. They put up posters with her picture and spoke to people who knew her, hoping someone might have information about her whereabouts. The police searched for Nicole and her car, trying to determine the route she took on the day she disappeared. Tragically, the worst fears were confirmed a few days later when a jogger discovered a young woman's body in a local park area. The jogger had taken an unusual route that morning. It was there that he stumbled upon something suspicious in the shrubbery, which turned out to be a brutally mutilated, naked body. The police were immediately notified, and forensic experts suggested that the crime was violent due to the presence of severe blunt force trauma and the lack of clothing. The autopsy revealed extensive bruising, abrasions, and blunt force injuries, indicating that the victim had been severely beaten before her death. The cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation, and it appeared that the killer had used their bare hands. Police initially believed the body they found was that of Nicole Peets, a young woman who had gone missing several days earlier and had been the subject of a citywide search. Her identity was confirmed by her family as Nicole. When Nicole's mother, Gail, saw her daughter's body at the morgue, she was overcome with grief and needed medical attention. Her husband, Rod, was also devastated, but his reaction seemed a bit unusual to some. He didn't seem truly distraught and his emotions seemed forced. However, at that time no one paid much attention to this, because everyone coped with the tragedy in their own way. Police believed the missing car was the primary target of the attack and would hold key evidence. They released a description of the gray Volkswagen Polo to the media, asking for tips. Weeks later, a security guard found the car in a parking lot on the outskirts of the city, noticing it had been parked there for an extended period. The police took the car for a thorough examination, hoping to find evidence and clues that would lead them to the perpetrator and help reconstruct the crime scene. However, their search yielded nothing. The only fingerprints and DNA found in the car belonged to Nicole and her husband, who occasionally drove the vehicle. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the investigators were reluctant to return the car to David. In addition, the victim's lack of clothes raised questions. The numerous injuries suggested a rage-driven attack, possibly a personal vendetta. However, Nicole was known for her kind nature and had no known enemies. The investigation into this complex case was on the verge of going cold, with no new leads or directions to pursue after nearly a year. The lack of witnesses and surveillance cameras in the parking lot where the car was abandoned made it difficult to gather evidence. However, one peculiar detail stood out. The driver's seat was positioned in a way that suggested the person driving the car was significantly taller and larger than the victim. The police obtained footage from the gas station security cameras, but the contents remained unclear. Frustrated by the lack of progress and the fact that the killer was still at large, Nicole's parents took matters into their own hands. They hired a private investigator to gather information and verify their suspicions, and offered a $10,000 reward to anyone who could provide useful information about the case. David, the husband of the victim, initially showed interest in the investigation, but his enthusiasm waned after 6 months. He eventually remarried, having a child with his new wife. This news was devastating for Gail, the victim's mother, as her daughter had been unable to have children, and David had often criticized her for this. Gail repeatedly suggested that David might be the culprit, but many people believed Gail was motivated by resentment. The police seemed to dismiss this theory altogether. However, 6 years after the crime, David was taken into custody as the prime suspect. One unusual circumstance was a gas station security footage that captured a man using Nicole credit card. The footage appeared to show a man resembling David, but he wore a head covering and dark glasses, making a positive identification impossible. Although this recording was not definitive proof, it was still added to the case file. Another discrepancy was the missing wedding ring, which Nicole never removed from her finger. Initially, investigators believed the killer might have taken it, but they found the ring in a box on the dressing table in Nicole's home. During the examination of Nicole's body, experts found a dental mouth guard in her mouth. This device was specifically designed to prevent teeth grinding, a condition known as bruxism, which Nicole experienced during sleep. The mouth guard had been prescribed to her shortly before her death due to her nervousness, which caused involuntary muscle spasms in her jaw. These spasms had led to the erosion of her tooth enamel and chipping of her teeth. The investigation concluded that Nicole was likely killed in her own bed while she was still asleep. This theory was supported by the fact that she was not wearing any clothes and her body was clean, with no signs of a struggle. Additionally, Nicole's face was free of makeup. The mouth guard found at the scene was not a significant factor, as Nicole had only recently started using it. Moreover, forensic experts analyzed the driver's seat in the car and found that the last person to sit behind the wheel had the same physical characteristics as David, Nicole's husband. The car only had fingerprints belonging to David and Nicole, suggesting that no one else had been in the vehicle. A crucial discovery was made possible by advances in technology. The killer had attempted to mislead the investigation by using Nicole's phone in various parts of the city. However, at the same locations and times, David's phone was also active, revealing a suspicious coincidence. Furthermore, it was discovered that David had a motive for the crime, and the seemingly perfect family was actually facing a severe crisis. Nicole was juggling multiple responsibilities, studying, working 2 jobs, and supporting others struggling with addiction. Meanwhile, her husband led a carefree life, unable to hold down a job and spending most of his time in bars and clubs. He would often use Nicole's earnings to fund his nightlife, including affairs with other women. Nicole tried to intervene in her husband's addiction, suggesting AA meetings, but he dismissed her concerns. The situation worsened as David's infidelity was revealed. After Nicole's sudden and mysterious death, David hastily filed for a large insurance payout and began a new relationship. It was later discovered that David had been having an affair with a woman named Jane for several months prior to Nicole's death. While Nicole was working or studying, David would often meet Jane at bars and clubs. Just before Nicole's birthday, David brought Jane to their home, where Nicole unexpectedly walked in on them. This led to a heated argument between Nicole and David. Nicole confided in her mother about the incident just days before she mysteriously vanished. Gail had her suspicions about her son-in-law from the start, but the police claimed they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him. As a result, the case was closed, and the family was left in the dark about the investigation. Over time, they lost hope that the person responsible would be held accountable. After his wife's death, David received a significant insurance payout, which he spent on lavish gifts for his mistress, Jane. Gail believed that Jane might have been involved in the crime, but she was only questioned as a witness due to lack of evidence. In 2013, David went to court, still denying any involvement in his wife's death. His lawyers initially argued that the evidence against him was circumstantial and not conclusive. However, as the prosecution presented more incriminating evidence, the defense shifted their strategy. They portrayed David as a victim, suggesting that his wife, Nicole, had become unbearable to live with due to her addiction to pain pills and drinking. The claims that Nicole was unstable were unfounded and disputed by everyone who knew her. Even if she had lost control, that would not have justified David's brutal murder of his wife. Ultimately, David's guilt was proven beyond a doubt, and he received the maximum sentence allowed by state law. David was sentenced to 18 years in prison, but he will be eligible for parole in 2025 after serving 2/3 of his sentence.